Hi. Got a quick announcement. We are going to be at the Portland Retro Gaming Expo this year. This is actually the 8th time we've been out there, which is crazy. That is taking place at the Oregon Convention Center in Portland, Oregon on October 18th through the 20th. So come on out and see us. We'll have a live panel, details coming shortly. And we can only do that thanks to everybody who has gone to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. That's how we can put money into doing something like that. So, yep, 2 announcements. You know that thing. Let's hear the dispatch.
My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Cole Ross.
And you're listening to Watch Out for Fireballs Dispatch, our monthly roundup Q&A show where patrons ask us questions and we answer them.
Yeah, so just like every month, we're going to answer your questions and prompts here at the opening. We're going to have a longer topic discussion, again, suggested by you, and then round out with your thoughts about August games. No thoughts on Way of the Samurai, which is a bummer, but also understandable. It's kind of an obscure game. But lots of thoughts about Final Fantasy V and Wolfenstein: The New Order.
Great.
Yeah.
Yep. And we'll be announcing what we're doing in October.
Yes. Yeah. So stick around for the end.
Yeah. We got you hostage, baby.
Fast forward. What's that?
Nobody leaves this fucking theater alive.
Yeah.
That's not true.
No. Grim.
Let's go ahead and get started.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll get us started here with a game question from Julia, Slack Stalwart.
Mm-hmm.
You get the power to remove one trope or mechanic from all video games for eternity. What do you do?
So
Jumping.
Jumping back for life, baby. I don't like how people go up in the air. I don't think it's right. I just don't think it's an affront. It was a perennial disappointment for me as a kid to realize that humans don't jump that way.
Yeah, like we had a plumber come to my house when I was younger, and I kept tossing my turtle at him, and he wouldn't jump. He just kept crying.
No, he's like, "What are you doing to that poor turtle?"
Yeah,
I'm licensed and bonded, but he only has that shell.
I was just trying to do remote salmonella, like at him.
You're launching turtles over the castle walls.
It was turtles and then handy snacks, and I just went back and forth, hoping he would eat with the same turtle besmudged hands.
Yeah.
Real answer would be random encounters.
Yep, random encounters.
No reason. There's no reason for these. Should not be.
Yeah, specifically the kind of random encounters that we encountered in FF5, like Fallout random encounters. Those are okay.
But if it's like a special bespoke thing.
Yes.
Like the cool, like the weird encounters you get, the secret encounters, those are cool.
Yeah.
I mean, specifically RPG encounters where it's like, and even then if you want to, there are RPG combat systems that work, just throw the enemy on the fucking map.
Yep.
Let me choose to engage with it. It is just the psychological cost of being interrupted sucks.
Yeah. Just so we don't give the same answer, I will throw something else in, which is grinding or farming for extremely rare drops.
Yeah.
That has never been additive. And just even when it is not absolutely necessary, that encroaches on even like midway optimal play a lot of the time. Repetition.
Yeah.
I think like repetition, if I can take that out of games that are not specifically about that. Yeah.
Like that kind of, like it's I'm replaying Final Fantasy Tactics, and Final Fantasy Tactics is full of that stuff through like item hunting and poaching.
Yeah.
Those very rare drops and steals, right? And one of the weird knock-on effects of that I didn't really grapple with until this playthrough is how it pollutes the kind of namespace for it. So like when you're online looking at stuff, right? Because it's like, oh, the iOS version has slightly different ninja requirements than I remember, from the PlayStation version, which I'd played the most times. What are they now? And I'm looking for it. And you get all these stuff about using equipment that is, or having builds that require this ridiculous farming and optimization, either, grinding up, Brave and Faith or like poaching rare monsters. And it's like, well, first catch a Hydra, and then hope that it breeds into this Hydra, which then you hope that it breeds to this Hydra. You can walk back and forth between these two towns while your monster's fucked.
Yeah.
And then
no, it's just chocobo breeding. What are you doing?
Yeah, it's just this time-consuming nightmare to get like a really good item, and the game doesn't require it.
No.
Like it could be worse if the game required it, but it does like make it so when you're talking about classes or like, because I like, one of the things I like about that game is that complexity. So when you're reading, class comparisons and stuff, people take that shit into account, like life on Earth isn't finite,
Right.
and it's just like, I'm not going to fucking spend all this time poaching.
Yeah.
Like your mind. So I would +1 that.
Yeah, I'm going to give kind of an additional answer, an option answer for this. That is very, very modest, but it's not like a lack of feature, but just some, I would ask for a lack of something. I wish no game didn't have subtitles, especially with the voice acting. Every game should have subtitles.
Yeah, agreed. There's no excuse.
Yeah,
like I play most games with subtitles. Even though I'm not hard of hearing, I feel like my hearing is not super great.
Yeah.
And has gotten worse. And just like the volume mixing in games is sometimes like there's certain frequencies it's hard for me to pick things out.
Atrocious. The volume mixing is generally atrocious.
Yeah. So I would love subtitles. Stop omitting them.
Please. Let's see here. Ryan says, I don't recall exactly when, but I remember hearing a brief mention of wizardry during one of the Final Fantasy V episodes, likely regarding the game's less than graceful dungeons. Speaking of first-person dungeon crawlers, have either of you tried the Etrian Odyssey series of games? I assume the mid-game grinding aspects would be a massive turnoff, but the depth provided by the numerous status elements, damage types, and binds, targeting body parts to prevent actions using that part, would appeal at least a philosophical level to you two.
Will Hughes, one of my best friends and friends of the show, is a huge fan. And I've been vaguely curious for a long time about them. When I first got a DS flash card, I picked up, which I bought for legit reasons, right? Like it was to play the translation of Rhythm Heaven and to play Retro Game Challenge 2. But I also used it to try games. And I used it to try it, and the aesthetics are a really big turnoff for me, which is a minor order concern. And then I just did not get deep enough to get into the parts that are cool that Will tells me about that I'm sure are cool.
Yeah. I never messed around with the Etrian Odyssey games, but I have played with Persona Q, which is neat. I've not played enough of it, again, to get to those cool parts, or to get to, or enough to like talk about it on a show, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I love those things in principle. I like the idea of keeping your own map, etc. It's just, not something that I've especially had an appetite for. I believe you that it's cool.
There's one of those, to me, it's in the pile with like the Spiderweb software games.
Yes.
Things I think I would like. I just don't have time, and there's so many of them at this point. And
is he still making those?
Spiderweb?
Yeah.
Games? No, I think he's mostly been curating. Like he's been working on a remake of one of the earlier ones for a very long time.
Gotcha.
Because it's just a dude. Like it's a dude and a couple guys. So it's a, just guys being dududes. Like
tales all the time.
Game making. So it's so there's just it's logo on. But yeah, I believe they're good. And that that aesthetic thing is real, right? Like it's a minor key concern, but like at one point Will was playing me, he had on his phone taped the level up noises of one of like the lady classes, and they were just sex moans. And then it was like coupled with like, the how to draw anime the anime way, like drawing and stuff. And I was like, man, this is doing a lot to keep me away. I guess there's a mystery dungeon entry, which would be a good entry point for me if I was going to give it a shot, but time.
Oh yeah. I think there's one. It might not be an Etrian Odyssey game, but it is a Shin Megami Tensei game that is kind of a horror game mixed in with that as well, where you're exploring like an underground Antarctic base. It's like SMT Strange Journey or something like that. That kind of is made by the same developers, I believe, but do not come for me with torches and pitchforks if that is not true.
Yeah, those are both are long running series with a lot of like esoterica.
Yes.
It's hard to internalize all that stuff from the outside.
Right.
This I got a question here from Benedict Chambers. It says, what is your favorite game that can be described as a love letter to X? Not necessarily your favorite X, though. So like, for example, like a love letter to do like Painkiller or whatever, or Serious
Yeah.
Sam as a love letter to, Quaker Doom
Right.
kind of thing. And I chose this one because I have an answer, even if it's not necessarily my, if I had a lot of time to think about it,
Mm-hmm.
I might choose a different answer. But just a game that I like championing because I think it's cool is Neon Struct.
Oh, yeah.
Same guy who made Eldritch. It's the only game of his that I've beaten. I really disliked Slayer Shock, and it sold like very few copies and more or less made him quit games, which I think sucks.
Yes.
Because I think Neon Struct is very cool and is like definitely like kind of a love letter to Deus Ex.
Yeah. It's like a cyberpunk stealth game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really minimalist. Soundtrack by like a pop band, which I love when like they do the entire soundtrack. And most of the music is diegetic. So most of the time it is like specific bands, like songs playing on a radio.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And we started that for checking out Comrade and ended up beating it, which is rare. It's only like 4 or 5 hours, so it's a quick game, but it's fun.
Yeah,
cool story. Yeah.
I don't necessarily have a great answer for this, so I'm going to go to a fallback, which is Gone Home as a love letter to the 90s.
Sure.
Just
but not necessarily your favorite 90s.
What?
Just in the question, it says with an X and not necessarily.
Yeah, no, just the ephemera that is kind of piled up, and just kind of the general, feel and the things that the notes allude to reminds me of my own childhood. So yeah, cheap nostalgia points, but I feel like there was a great deal of love and care that went into that particular aspect. That is, obviously not talked about as much as the other triumphs of that game, or things that people detract the game for. Yeah. No, I think that that is going to be my basic ass answer.
Yeah, good answer.
Yeah, let's see here. Andrew writes, here's maybe I'll shorten this, maybe I won't. So my son just turned 5 and loves to watch me play pretty much everything. He also likes to try to play. Deciding what games I show him and in what order has been something I've put way too much thought into. Start where I did in the NES era? Well, that's fun. He loves Bubble Bobble, but most NES era games are really unforgiving and hard. But it also feels wrong to just dump him into Hollow Knight without him ever playing Metroid, What games would you show to your theoretical spawn, and in what order?
Well, yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
I think that like for that, my instinct, I have no likely will never have children, so this is all theoretical, but it would just be like I would play games and then follow their interest.
Yeah,
like if I was playing something and they seemed interested, like just go with that. Like, oh, they seem to like Shovel Knight or what have you.
Yeah.
They're interested in interested. I don't really have a good conception as to what a 5-year-old is like. What does that mean in terms of like how sapient and with it, like what they'd be capable of? I have no idea. The guy in my drums has 2 kids and he talks about them, and I think one's probably approaching 5.
Right.
And he can kind of play games. He can kind of play drums. He can kind of do a lot of stuff. I don't know how I would teach him to do anything though.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of just the wrong person for this question. Apologies. Like, I don't have kid experience.
No. Before I give my unqualified answer as well, because I don't know that kids are in the cards for me, but I would suggest, if you don't already, listen to The Level, because Dennis, my friend since college and co-host on that show forever, has he has two kids, and he will generally talk about games that he plays and shares with his kids, which goes from like, I like the Jack and Daxter games, so I wanted to play that and have them watch, up to like, they saw me playing this classic server of City of Heroes, and they're like, I want to make a hero too, so they sat down and made a hero together. So there are all kinds of good kind of discussions there. And I think that his approach, and the one that you kind of laid out, Gary, is the one that I think would be, the most likely to stick if you're looking for efficacy, which is just listen to them and observe them and see what they're interested in. I think setting a curriculum and forcing them to eat their vegetables before they get to dessert will make them consider a lot of good stuff to be vegetables. When it ought to be fun. They ought to be playing stuff because they want to. I think that having too strong of a hand on that particular rudder will make them resent and reject Yeah. Just resent being steered. Picture of your dad sat you down and said, all right, before you can buy your own CD, you need to listen to the entire discography of Steely Dan.
Yeah. Or even a good band.
Yeah.
or even like Velvet Underground.
I was just picturing a dad band.
Yeah. No. Yeah. But I mean, the idea here is like, what is the canon?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like the no offense to Celia Dan, they're fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I agree that it's probably, and also like one of these things too, I think, and I don't think this is necessarily Andrew's issue, and it's definitely not anyone I know who is a gamer parent.
Right.
But one of the things I know I'd have to be careful about is the reason I'm saying it, not because I'm projecting onto anyone else, but is just like knowing if the kid is interested in games at all.
Right.
Like I'd want them to be, and I'd want to share this with them, but like if they just weren't interested, I'd also be like, okay, you're a different kind of kid, and I know that's probably very easy to say when you don't have a kid, just be like, oh, I would just treat them like a tiny individual adult. But that's always been kind of my thought about it.
Yeah. I mean, just there is an inclination to break a kid in the way that you are broken.
Yes.
And B, to want to train them to be like you, even if it's subconscious. I've noticed that. But, I think back to all the times when my stepdad had to find my stepdad and my father had to find new ways to relate to me because I wasn't necessarily that interested in sports.
Yeah.
So,
for sure.
But there were other ways to do that. So, per the kind of the point about I can't just have them play Hollow Knight without having played a Metroid. Consider working backward as well. Again, this is just advice from a completely unqualified person. But if they dig Hollow Knight and they have a lot of fun with that, A, that's cool because that's a very difficult game. B, you can use that as a discussion to say, oh, if you like that, there's a bunch of other stuff that is like that. Would you be interested in seeing Symphony of the Night? Just kind of showing it to him and say, this kind of idea is older than you think. It's possible to work backward. I think that also gives them the historical context.
Yeah. And that happens with like every medium and stuff too. Like I got into bands and then I got into the bands that they liked, through learning about that, like the people who had kind of forged ahead or whatever.
Yeah.
So, and then as that happens, your kid will get older. Stuff too. So, last game question we have here. Tara Parker says, difficulty has been such a hot topic in games discourse lately that it would be neat to hear you discuss different kinds of difficulty in game, execution pressure, obfuscation, time pressure, strategic decision making, etc., and how you personally relate to them, ways you've seen them done well and poorly in games you've covered or played recently. So we did in kind of a grand thing on difficulty. We've done a dispatch where we talked about difficulty in general.
Yes.
So without wanting to overlap too much. With that. So that's like a lot of like, yes, difficulty options are good and no condescension in that. But in terms of specific kind of ways that difficulty can be done, there's a couple things that I really dislike or think about, or, things I do like. I am always here for making decisions with unlimited time, consequential decisions. So Into the Breach, tactics games, difficult RPGs. Love that. Something I don't like, you ring a bell and it sets a timer, and then you have to make it through an obstacle course before the timer runs out or the door at the end closes.
Right.
And then you have to run back and try again and ring the bell.
Yeah.
This is 3D platformers love doing that. And I think it sucks.
Yeah.
I think it's super shitty. I never like it.
Yeah. That is executional demands with repetition as the stick. Right.
Yep. The failure state is just try again, which is something, I've been on a kick about, like how annoying I find that. And so that is a way of adding difficulty to relate back to the question by adding time pressure to something that ordinarily would be very difficult. And I think a lot of times that is kind of like an artificial way to juice difficulty. Yeah. Not artificial, but like kind of cheap way, I guess.
Yeah, it doesn't feel it feels like empty difficulty calories. What did this teach me about the game by doing this? Just did, like, especially when those popped up in Tomb Raider games. It was super silly on Tomb Raider. Like I can believe that they had the ancient technology or what have you to have a lever that opened this, but to have a 30-second ticking timer. Yeah. That's a little weird. Little bit. I do like the idea if that happened, if you could find and sabotage the mechanism So like, oh, I found the the timer is based on this on this hourglass. Well, I just shoot the hourglass, and all of a sudden it doesn't work anymore.
Yeah,
it thinks it's
awesome.
always going. Yeah, I think
that's
that'd
a
be
good
cool
kind
idea.
of challenge, right? Like that's exploration. That's like ingenuity.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's certain like challenges. Like these challenges are meant to test different aspects of your performance, and like it's just funny because there's different aspects that are different strengths, like things you are interested in having tested.
Mm-hmm.
Into different degrees, which is what makes difficulty subjective. But it's also interesting because there are kinds of difficulty that are just tend to be more accepted.
Mm-hmm.
As a thing. Like I was thinking about this in relation to Sekiro because I finally put it down. Like I fought all the bosses in it, and where like if something is too easy, that's the devs' fault. To Gamer Americans, to gamer consciousness, like they fucked up. If something is too hard, though, it's our fault. Yeah. Like that tuning isn't something that's considered to be part of the game. Only one direction can be a problem.
Yeah.
With that.
Yeah.
Which is just kind of a weird thing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Broadly defining difficulty as anything that stymies or slows progress. One of my least favorite methods for making a game more difficult, especially one that is exploration based. And I run into this quite a bit on, when I play games for Hexcrank, especially games I haven't played for a while, or games that I'm coming to for the first time, where the game does a very poor job of communicating what is next. And oftentimes for games of a certain era or a certain, kind of design ethic, what it is up to you to determine what comes next by going and pressing every single corner, backtracking and hoping that, something in the room, something in the world state changed. And I think that is kind of played off as, you have to explore, you have to pay attention. I believe that it is incumbent upon the game to point you, or at least give you a suggestion, not necessarily lead you by the nose, but like indicate when and where a world state is going to change.
Yeah, and that's like the point of the game is something where you like poke on different seeds.
Yeah.
And that's something that has to be just used really judiciously. Like that cannot be deployed, and it can't be a bullseye drawn around a target you hit.
Right.
Like it can't be like, oh, it is intentional. We wanted to increase the sense of mystery, and it's like, well, you have like if this is a narrative survival horror game with a sense of urgency for my character, where like my character would reasonably know where to go next, but I don't.
Yeah.
That's up there with like a way that adventure games will do this shit is by having arbitrary world state flags.
Yeah.
Change, like this door opens when you talk to this character, even though that character didn't open this door. That is a way of like essentially just kind of wasting your time, making you spend more time kind of pushing on things. That is, again, increasing that friction, if not necessarily difficulty, because it's just the tedium of, and that difficulty episode we talked about, like, is tedium a kind of difficulty and stuff? And like, probably not. It's just a fun set of words to say.
Yes.
Fun thing to explore.
And just a little bit more on top of this, I think that no matter what kind of difficulty there is, anytime where you instantly flip from success to failure or succeeding to have failed, that is inherently frustrating. And I talk about this a lot, as our thoughts on the Souls games have evolved. We talk about games that demand perfection, and especially in Sekiro, where we're talking about, man, you can only take like 2 hits before you're down and there's no time to heal, etc. What I want in a game that is difficulty is the drama of almost failing, but then succeeding. Yes. And in order for that to happen, it cannot be that like, oh, you're spotted and then, restart at the checkpoint, etc. Yeah. We talk about, we talk about that in stealth games where being spotted has to be fun too. That expands to a bunch of other stuff. The ability to bounce back, and the ability to ride that line of uncertainty. It sucks when you failed and there's nothing you can really do about it until the act is complete. Right.
Yeah.
So I want more stuff to be tuned, and I think this is just a modest ask, but like, I think I would like more stuff to be tuned, like RE4, where it is constantly keeping you at that line. Right.
Well, because otherwise it seems like in some ways that was like a huge feat of like adjusting that difficulty. But in other ways, like that is otherwise you were looking at like a one size fits all approach to it, which is just very, unlikely to hit that kind of sweet spot. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and that's just me looking at the feeling that I want from difficulty and trying to solve backwards.
And that doesn't mean you want to be like, when you say you want to nearly fail and then succeed, it doesn't mean you want to be invincible, right? Like,
no.
We talk about, one of the things, and again, they got it in one and then quit doing it, with the health system in Dark Souls 1, which is this is the number of mistakes you can make between these 2 points. And that mistake level is pretty generous.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you can make between the bonfire in the parish and the Taurus demon, like, you can make 3-4 serious mistakes and still have enough health to fight the Taurus demon.
Yeah.
That it's just like, it's tuning, and if that was adjusted dynamically, ooh la la. So,
yeah.
Do you want to move us on to life questions?
Yes. So Sean asks, do either of you have video game inspired tattoos? I have a quote on my side from Dark Souls 2 that means a lot to me in a game sense, and then a life sense and an ironic sense as far as tattoos go. It is the quote that appears when using the bonfire aesthetic. What is done cannot be undone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good tattoo.
Yep. No tattoos here. Sorry, that's a disappointing answer.
Yeah, I have 5 tattoos. I've gotten very close to getting a couple different tattoos. If Steve Gaynor didn't have 0451, I would get that, but I know him, so I can't. Like, if I didn't know him in person, I could be like, oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
But like, because I know him, I can't do that. I have gotten very close to getting Mort from Torment, which is also just kind of a fun skull.
Yeah, that has plausible deniability.
Yeah. I wish the symbol of Torment was cooler.
Yes.
But it's a little Ed Hardy for me. So I've definitely had some I thought about.
I wish that the dark sign didn't look like a water ring.
Yeah, me too. Like, that's and I like the dark sign. I've thought about getting, if I was going to get a Dark Souls tattoo, I'd probably get the dark sign. Like, I like the we are all cursed, like, where this is humanity. Like, there's philosophical things I like about that.
Yeah.
But I so I would get that. But yeah, I have not gotten one.
Yeah.
I think quite honestly, and I haven't done this, like, when I get a tattoo, I think about it for a long time because I think I'm going to get a Cormet tattoo.
Ooh.
I love Cormet.
Cormet is good.
It's really on brand with my The Dud tattoo.
Yes. Would you get it on the opposing arm?
Possibly. And like, oh, Millhouse. Oh, cool. Kermit. Like, I love Muppet Babies. Like, just kind of leaning into the friction appeals to me.
Yeah.
And I love those cartoons.
Yeah, tiny puppets are amazing.
I've been cultivating my Rombi the Rhombus impersonation. Hey, that's a pretty good Rombi the Rhombus. Hey, you sound just like that. Hey,
Rombi.
Hello, Rombi. So good. Do you have a tuning fork? No. It is. I love them. I love them. So, maybe my love is that strong. It's been a year and I haven't been able to stop thinking about them. So.
Have you told the story about how you wanted to get some Muppet stuff printed and they wouldn't do it because they thought it was? I ended up for my last birthday. Last year was a Tiny Puppets themed birthday party, and I was trying to get some pins there, and I got like a copyright notice that was like, copyright Muppet Babies, and I was like, no, this is a parody. Here's a tweet, from the guy who created it saying it's okay, and then they were like, I'm sorry, but you're gonna have to prove that you own the Muppet Babies, which is a great sentence. Like, hey, I'm sorry. Like, if that had been said with a gun, like Samuel Jackson in Pulp Fiction, like, said to me, like. Situation, like, I'm sorry, motherfucker, but you're gonna have to prove that you own the Muppet Babies. Like, good lord. Oh my, thank you. I just found a different print shop that would just do it. Oh yeah, it's just so funny. Like, oh, this moral stand you decided to make for this to avoid, my 50 buttons impinging on copyright. Yeah, like this is a big sting operation.
Yeah, ironclad. Good job, shitty print shop.
Yeah.
If you got a video game tattoo, is there one you would get?
I don't know.
Yeah. Not a tattoo guy.
Probably not.
No, it's okay. Dave says, in the not too distant future, the Matrix uploader doodad is real. If you could use this machine to be perfectly knowledgeable and infinitely proficient in one area or activity, what would it be? Would you use this for personal growth or the betterment of society? Would there be a way to accomplish both? Yeah, that's tricky. Because like you want to, adding in that betterment society, it's like, oh, like I would love to be an expert at, feeding the poor. I'd like to be, like climate change. But then I also think all these feel like ways you could sign yourself up for a hell.
Yeah, the trick is signing yourself up for one that doesn't make you a worse person or very, very difficult to be around. Because like if I downloaded the entirety of video game knowledge, I would be impossble to listen to on these shows.
Yeah, I would quit. Yeah. Like it would be me and Jeremy. Because experts are annoying. Like just kind of in general. And I guess like there are people who know a lot about something that don't act like they're experts.
Yes.
And they're not annoying, but it's, it's tricky, right? Like it is the temptation to be like, I'm professor. Welcome to class. Like whenever you talk about something. And like, if you do that, I guarantee you, nobody likes you. Like it is a bad thing to be.
Yeah. This is distinct from, say, like trusting experts when it comes to climate change and stuff.
That's interpersonally. The hell I was thinking.
Yeah,
I'm thinking of interpersonally, and I'm not saying like experts in climate change are obnoxious to be around because there's lots of other subjects.
Yeah.
But like if you were doing a fun like podcast like this and you were a video game expert, man.
No.
And the thing about climate change is like you'd get that expertise, and then you would just join the frustrated thousands of scientists who can't get anyone to listen to them. That would be very frustrating.
Yeah.
So it feels like or a way to spoil enjoyment of something for yourself. Like maybe if I'm an expert in music, I don't like it. If I know everything, if I matrix uploaded everything there is to know,
I know all the patterns.
Yeah, I'm just kind of done.
Yeah.
This is the tricky question. Maybe cooking.
Yeah, cooking would be really good, I think. I was going to say like handiwork. Handiwork or construction or building, because at the very least I could use that skill to like, I don't know, go build homes for people. And also be applicable for myself. I don't know.
Like it's just, I don't know. Like the things that are to betterment, I feel like the problems of society, like the ways you can make things better are, deck is kind of stacked against you on that scale, on a big scale.
And also like it is a false premise to say as an individual, I'm going to do this when every single thing needs to be solved through collective action,
There's systemic changes, so even if I was an expert at recycling and I got a job at like Recyclo, the government would still,
I have so much anxiety about recycling. If I could maybe just do that, and that way I never put the wrong thing in the wrong bin and feel bad about it.
You know the secret, right?
Well, what is the secret? Well, I mean, it all ends up in the same landfill.
Well, no. Yeah. It's here first, folks.
Yeah.
Round down, because in recycling, so if you're not sure if something can be recycled, throw it away. Because when they're picking up your recycling, if they see a couple things in your recycling bin that are not recyclable, they don't sort it. They just throw the whole thing in the garbage.
Yeah.
So it is better to err on the side of caution. Like it's best to know. Yeah. But if you don't know, choose garbage, because otherwise you're risking losing all your, throwing out the entire baby with just a little bit of bathwater.
Yeah. I think cooking is a really good answer, because that at the very least, it can benefit you, but also it can benefit people around you who are close to you.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt. I don't think I'd ruin food myself for myself, because I still like food.
Yeah. I don't know an awful lot of like expert chefs who don't delight in food. I also don't know an awful lot of expert chefs. I watch them on television, but
yes. Yeah. Like if I was like an expert, like medical person, right? Like, and knew all of the medical stuff. It's like, well, do I go be a doctor? They're not going to let me just practice because of this genie wish, So it's like, I don't know. Yeah. It's a tricky question. So I know food might seem like small potatoes, but, and potatoes of all sizes, honestly.
Yeah.
Once you're an expert. But that's the best I can come up with.
I like the idea of just cooking a potato, like how difficult that is depending on size.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm only up to red potatoes right now.
The expert chef who just wheels in this huge potato on a wagon. Just like my greatest challenge yet.
Well, I mean, I am, probably what is one level above novice? And, let's say
yourself a level 2 chef?
Maybe.
Oh,
I don't know. Like, I just,
the Epicurious level 2 is logged on.
Maybe, I don't know. Like, don't ask me to prove it, but I'm, I know how to use a knife. So I think that is, that is not a skill that everybody has, so me with my level of skill, having, used pans and stuff like that, I would not know how to begin cooking a wheelbarrow size. I would not know how to begin cooking a county fair size potato.
Well, sure, like with experience using pans and stuff like that.
I just have people who there are people who only microwave. It's a thing.
I consider I had to, I don't know. I've never eaten your cooking.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if you're a level 1 and people only use the microwave or level 0 in the Epicure.
Yeah. That's fine. That is okay. So that is okay with me.
When I watch the cooks, the level chefs, like on that thing, like level 1 tends to make a lot of sense. Like sometimes they're doing, some bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I put tons of ketchup on my grilled cheese. And I'm like, what are you doing?
No.
But like up until that point, that grilled cheese looked pretty good.
Yeah. It wasn't my intention to like inflate my sense.
No.
I just, compared to even people in my family who just are useless,
Yes. No, I just, and I was also just thinking, I love the debasement of the Epicurious, like, chef declaration. like, I'm a level 1 chef. And then just somebody comes along, it's like, I'm a level 2 chef. And it's always level 2 ones that are super cocky.
Yeah.
And then level 3, they're just actually legit and work in a restaurant. So.
Right.
So what a weird, miserable job that is too. Like being an expert in it would be fun for yourself. But everything I've ever, like on Ask Tell on Something Awful, I read like a bunch of restaurant threads, and it just sounds like thankless, long hours, shitty, like nicotine soaked work.
Yeah,
to be a chef, like
where you have to basically work for months for free as an interview. Where you're working in staging and stuff like that. No, fuck that.
And work on your knees, basically.
Yes.
Like it just sounds so hard on your body. Like none of it sounds good.
Yeah, no. I think cooking would be the right way, because individually the skill that we can act at is to better the lives of those closest to us, and making food for somebody is love.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I got is it me or you?
I believe this is me. Let's see here. I know you've got this highlighted, but I want to do it.
No, I didn't have it highlighted on purpose.
Okay. Zach asks, moving us on to media questions. What do you think of the recent explosion of, quote, mainstream podcasts, meaning corporate and or celebrity backed? Will they overshadow the more independent podcasts, or does the rising tide lift all ships?
Yeah. Wow. Like it's I don't know that it, like I can see, I don't know how it'll actually shake out.
No.
I'm not against it. It's fine.
No.
Like if you meet somebody and they just listen to Serial, that's fine. I'm not gonna like try to obscure them about stuff.
No.
Yeah, I think it is fine. A lot of those things are not to my taste.
Yeah.
I don't, I haven't really liked any of them that I've listened to. And that's doesn't say anything really about like its impact though, or whether it's good or not. They're just kind of not for me.
Yeah.
So,
I think that it has led to a glut, and also like this weird, namespace pollution, where you will see somebody say like, oh, I need a new podcast. I need something like Serial, S-Town. And then they list a whole bunch of other true crime shows. And then people just recommend a whole bunch of other true crime shows. I think that like weirdly, because of Serial, like podcasts have become synonymous with true crime stuff. For a lot of folks, especially in kind of the broader popular media. I think the thing that personally annoys me about this rise, is seeing a think piece written in the New York Times about how podcasts are finally a thing. Or that one especially annoying article that was like, have we reached peak podcasts? When somebody doesn't try to succeed. It
was really annoying.
Yeah.
So for people who don't know, the background on that is that it was like, have we reached peak podcast? And it was an interview with a woman who started a podcast called The Advice Podcast.
Yes.
And did like 7 episodes and never picked up, advertisers. And the article and stuff was like, Squarespace wasn't calling. Casper Matches wasn't picking up. And they
described it like, oh, we got into a conference room and we talked into our iPhone that we had sitting there. And, when we give advice, we say, hey, don't let the gear get in the way. You can make a minimal investment and still have something sound good. That is a growth area. Just make sure it sounds It sounds as close to things that you listen to as possible. So don't read my tone here as being like elitist or whatever. An iPhone sitting in the middle of a table ain't gonna cut it.
Well, that had nothing to do with why this didn't cut it, though.
No, right?
Like,
but
yeah, like,
it was indicative of just the effort that they put into it broadly.
Like, I agree.
Yeah.
But for me, the bigger thing was the expectation of instant success, I think, was the way that they were more off base, right? Like, starting off with an iPhone on a conference table doesn't bother me on principle at all.
Okay.
Like, that's fine. You know, you're starting, you don't even know, like, it was called the fucking advice podcast.
Yes.
Like, they did not have a concept. They didn't, you know, they needed to work some shit out.
Yeah.
You know, starting that with like a no money solution, that makes tons of sense to me.
Yeah.
It's just they did 7 episodes and we're like, why isn't Casper calling? And even if they had, because the other thing happens too, right? Like there are tons of podcasts in Portland, you know, that I see, like when I research them, that have studios and producers.
Yeah.
And we've talked about that. So they've put in the money, right? They sound great. Nobody listens to them.
Right.
Like they don't have kind of followings.
Yeah.
And it's because it's a cart before the horse thing. Like even if that advice podcast had the best equipment in the world, they didn't have like a concept. They had like no tenacity, and they went into it assuming they'd make it.
Yeah.
That's the part that to me is annoying. Like it's annoying when people assume that your job is easy.
Yes.
You know, it's like, and we want people to start podcasts. Like we've always said, like, hey, try that, you know, do it, get in there. But it's not, that isn't the same thing as saying like, you know, just because we're saying you can do it doesn't mean that we're saying it's easy. And 2, you're not entitled to any success. Like this was just kind of like a upper middle class white woman from New York who just kind of ran in these circles and had heard these podcasts and was like, oh, I can do this. I'm going to make a living at this.
Yeah.
And just decided to. And that's the thing that bothers me. Like it is, you know, it's not about like putting in your dues necessarily, but it's about not recognizing the luck and tenacity involved in success in any creative pursuit.
Yeah.
You know,
and then also not using your personal connection to go and whine to the New York Times about it.
Yeah, Joe. Yeah, there's an element of like jumping the, you know, the queue to that, right?
Yeah.
That just kind of feels like, yeah, you know, like you get a bunch of experience with this because you can talk, you know, you can get this news story and get all this national attention and stuff, and that's like just like a unreasonable amount of privilege for somebody who doesn't deserve shit.
Yeah.
Basically, and like. I get that happens. And at a certain point, right, like we're those guys too. And I've thought about that a lot where it's like, you know, there are people who podcast who are probably as good as we are, who don't have the success that we have. And it's not that we deserve it more than they do. Like that's where that luck factor comes in.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not like we have access to some channels that a lot of people don't have.
Yeah.
You know, and we use them, and shaking that kind of hard Scrabble mindset has been hard for me to do. Like, and it's not totally unearned, right? Like we're independent. We're not rolling in it, right? I'm still podcasting from my 2-windowed studio apartment. But the, yeah. So anyway, I mean, that's kind of a tangent, but the, you know, basically the idea that like anyone can do this, I can do this. It just, you know, a Casper Carfax sponsorship comes standard. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to go whine to the New York Times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's just the repellent. As a thing.
Yeah.
The true crime thing doesn't bother me as much. Like that's just a popular genre. I think of it like comics.
Yeah.
Like there will be rises and falls in genre, you know, for any kind of new medium. That doesn't bug me too much. And it doesn't bother me too much that like something like Welcome to Night Vale like takes off and gets books and all that stuff. And it's like, well, you know, they just had more luck. Like more luck than we had, and we have more luck than some other people do. Like I think that's, you know, that's okay.
Yeah. You know, I think that broadly for me, you know, asking is this does a rising tide lift all ships? In one sense, yeah, there's a limited amount of time, and yes, there is a limited amount of money that people can put into either sponsors or direct support. But it's kind of like, I'm super happy to see Patreon doing so well. And just, you know, whenever I see somebody else say, hey, I started a Patreon because of X, Y, and Z, the more people who get into that ecosystem, the more they start looking. The barrier to entry, the barrier to acquiring them as somebody who, you know, listens to your show, as somebody who knows how to download podcasts now or knows how to support through Patreon, that means that everybody can benefit because we have gotten more of those people over the hump. What I don't like, and this was this was a controversy a few weeks ago, maybe 2 months ago, but like Luminary, I think that's bullshit. Those are VC backed carpetbaggers. That venture is bound to fail. And I'm sure that when it does, it is going to cause an awful lot of doom and gloom. When in reality, the only relationship that has ever mattered has not been, you know, the listener with the platform. It has been the listener with the creators. Anything that complicates that is inherently, you know, I think corrosive.
Yeah. Yeah. And with the specifics things about this, like not just like do you get people in the Patreon ecosystem, but you get more people who know what a podcast is,
yes,
and know what to expect and all of those kind of things. So it does help in that sense. Yeah. It's also that kind of like doom and gloom part is always overblown.
Yeah.
Like we've weathered Patreon being over like 4 times. Yeah. You know, so like when that Luminary thing dies or whatever the newest like kind of constructed prefab podcast network made to make money like dies, there will be a lot of talk is like podcast over, but they're not really talking about any podcaster I know. Right. Like they're talking about that lady, you know, the podcasting construct in people's minds that is at the center of that lady's assumption that starting a podcast automatically enrolls you on the Casper Mattresses free money program.
Right.
You know, so
yeah,
there's money in the mattress. Casper. Yeah. So I'm very happy that we don't have to do that shit.
Yep.
Rowan says, I've been recently trying to get into more horror media because I love the cool ideas and a lot of this stuff. I cannot wait for Nyarlathotep week. Thank you. Neither can I. But I can't get over the hump of hating jump scares and I guess being terrified generally. Watched Hereditary on Gary's recommendation, and it's definitely a good film. Without spoiling anything, I could handle the movie right until the last 20 minutes, at which point I had to pause and kind of skip my way forward. Then went back and watched it properly. Themes, story, and general quality of the film are awesome, but I hate that I essentially had to ruin the ending for myself. Was this ever a problem for you guys? Can you push past this somehow? For reference, I can play Resident Evil games fine. Dead Space was a bit much, and I watched JC's John Carpenter's The Thing and thought it was pretty good and not especially scary. So jump scares. Mm-hmm. How do you get over the visceral feeling of being scared, the repellents?
Immersion therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just your stepdad constantly busting in to show you his new chainsaw and hockey mask.
I mean, just you just have to recruit yourself a friend to be your personal spaghetti.
Yeah, gotta get a pocket spaghetti.
This is one of the. I don't know how deleterious this attitude is, but I think that jump scares are something that get less scary over time. Like obviously, if you have a heart condition, maybe don't expose yourself to it. But you know, eventually it gets less. You know, I think it's an investment kind of thing to learn to stop being bothered by them.
I still get got every time a jump scare happens. Mm-hmm. Like I have never gotten over them as a thing. And there's definitely differences in like what will kind of trigger my sensitivities to stuff and what won't. Mm-hmm. I think that it is kind of key to enjoy that feeling of anticipation.
Yes.
Like if you're going to enjoy a horror movie that has jump scares in it, or horror movie, but something like Five Nights at Freddy's is too much for me because it's all jump scares.
Yeah.
That's not interesting to me. I have to be pulled along, kind of thrilled by the context of the jump scares, which is why like Hereditary worked for me. But like I also am susceptible to that stuff, and I do a lot of wizzo tactics. Like I do. So I went and saw Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark yesterday, which is a surprisingly scary movie for like its very kitty wraparound plot. And like, if I'm in a theater, something's going to happen, and depending on how I'm feeling, like, and this can depend on a lot of factors, like my blood sugar and like what mood I'm in, how much sleep I got, how much caffeine I've had that day, etc. If I feel like I cannot handle just like staring right at the abyss and having something jump out at me and having scary music, I watch the movie out of my peripheral vision.
Yeah.
And I've done that for games as well. Like if a game, when we did Amnesia, which I think is a scary game, there are portions of that where I kind of look at the corner of the screen and move forward. And watch it out of my peripheral vision, and it gives me a sense of remove. Yeah. One of the least scared I've ever been playing a scary game was when I did a Let's Play of Amnesia, Hamnesia, and talking.
Yes.
Like along with something, like having somebody there has a whistling in the dark effect as well.
Yes.
So maybe try playing them with a friend.
Yeah. I think that is a good that is a very good suggestion. Having people around does mitigate that quite a bit.
and sometimes you don't want that. Like if you became an aficionado for this stuff, like, there are movies like Midsummer was way less scary to me than Hereditary, partly because it's less of a scary movie, but partly because I saw it in a big theater with my girlfriend. Whereas I watched Hereditary in a creepy 1-bedroom apartment I lived in for 2 months that was like on a gravel lot. In like a more 3-wheeler and gun section of Portland, not to be classist, but it was like a little bit strictly more dangerous, and not because and that's not ethnic coding, that's white people with guns. Like there's a big Trump sign like in the alley and things like that. So I watched that under extremely scary conditions. And so sometimes some things I will not want to ruin for myself because I want that pure like creeping dread feeling. And sometimes you can mitigate it in lots of different ways. I find.
What I would say, like if John Carpenter's The Thing it didn't necessarily scare you, there are any number of, like, for lack of a better word, really schlocky body horror kind of gore kind of things. You may just want to start watching older movies. Because we're in a golden age of horror, and they're very good at it now. I mean, it's kind of like Weed today versus Weed in the 70s. Exactly. The before the movie, there was the latest or the complete trailer for It too, which I hadn't seen before, which like looks cool. I like that movie a lot, the first one, and in the trailer, like it was just like incredibly spooky. The little, like that little, I don't even know if it's a musical, that little sound like like motif that happens during those, that kind of laughing sounding squeaking is so good. God, I'm so excited.
It looks awesome. Like I'm really excited, and that was incredibly scary movie.
So I don't mean to sound like a callous jerk when I say like, oh, it's a thing you can work through. Obviously, everybody has different dispositions. It just depends on how much you want to learn to feel uncomfortable. It's a little bit like I don't drink coffee, and I'd be interested to learn more about coffee. You have to drink some coffee.
Yeah. Agreed. So I would say those are the kind of the main fear mitigation techniques. Also, sometimes like, and this is what Rowan did with Hereditary, knowing what will happen is a good way. If like you just can't get through it, but you still want to see how it happens. Like
spoil it for yourself.
Spoil it for yourself. I don't think that's necessarily that's up to the individual how much it's going to bother you. If the question, if it and like we talk about games all the time, people will say, oh, it's a choice between the ideal experience and a lesser one because you spoiled it for yourself. But if it's actually a decision between no experience and a lesser one, take the lesser one and spoil it for yourself so you know what's going to happen. I don't think there's any problem with that. If you want to get those ideas, the things you like.
If there are specific things that really, really bug you, and you're just curious going into the movie, go to doesthedogdie.com. I mean, yes, that is useful for knowing if there is violence to animals that happens here, but they've got all kinds of categories for things that really, bug folks. So like just looking here for It, like, is there a claustrophobic scene? Is there a hanging? Is there a hospital scene? Is there a mental institution? All of those. And they are, they say either yes or no. And then there are comments that elucidate. So like, is there eye mutilation? Pennywise gets stabbed in the eye by the losers during the haunted house scene, which isn't a pretty sight. Okay, cool. So if you know yourself and you know what's gonna get you, then that is a good resource, and it's free. Consider that to be like Run P, but for horror triggers.
And it's it's one of those things too where like Stephen Molyneux would make a video about how shitty snowflakes are, that they need these trigger warnings. Sometimes it's not even a trigger warning, it's just like wanting to know what you're getting into. Like that's one of the things, those arguments about like college being a safe place being bad are all such horseshit, because they're just like, no one is saying that you're going to do a great classics of literature course and just like, they're always imagining the person who sneaks it. Like there's something about the conservative mind where they're always imagining the person who's like out to get them. And it's like, oh, this person's just going to lie and say that they're triggered by everything and avoid doing any of the reading. No, maybe sometimes there's like one or two things somebody doesn't want to have, or they're willing to read it. They just want to know it's coming. Like surprises matter. So like, I'm not any of those horror things. There's nothing in particular in horror that I would say that I'm like triggered by in any kind of traumatic sense. Right. But like, teeth stuff weirds me out. Maybe I have a lot of anxiety about that, and I don't want to see somebody's, hair grow out of somebody's teeth.
Right.
Call me crazy. I'm just like, I can't, I don't want to look at that. And knowing in advance isn't a bad thing.
No.
So yeah, it's all opt-in. So is the college class.
Yeah. Does the dog die? Does the dog die have it does have a jump scare category.
That's great.
And a lot of them have like brief little descriptions, like for Stranger Things, like, oh yeah, the deer scene is definitely a jump scare. So, if there's a deer, cool. Like I should probably brace for that.
Yep. Time to look at the corner of the screen or fixate on the exit sign in the theater, or look between, your eyes, or bury your head in your partner's shoulder, or any number of those things. So, going to jump ahead just a little bit to a show question here. Ian says, Duckfeed.tv has restructured a great deal since January. What change or practice has been the most difficult to maintain? I like this because it's a tough question. Yeah. It feels like telling tales out of school. Yeah. Even though they're tales in school.
Yeah. No, the tales about school.
Yeah. Talking about school. Yeah, I don't, this is, I'm going to put a gigantic asterisk next to this that I want people to pay attention to, because people follow that, like, anything you say before a but doesn't count kind of things, and it's like, no, like, this actually counts, with the caveat that almost everyone has been absolutely dear. We have gotten a minor amount of exposure to the parts of the Soulsborne audience that were not a reason why we stopped doing the show, but were something I didn't miss.
Yeah.
95% of everyone has been awesome about that. But that 5% is very unique, and they're kind of back. Yeah. I know there are people who hate hearing anyone complain about anything online. But this is the question, right? Like, what's one of the hardest things to maintain, and maintaining that, allowing for that, being exposed to that, has been an unexpected difficulty.
Yes. Just re-exposing ourselves to that is absolutely something that came with the restructure, because the restructure came with opening Bonfire Site chat back up, which has been generally a positive experience. I've enjoyed doing the show again quite a bit. Me too. Yeah. Like,
I love being back. People have been really cool. Like, it's lots of really great discussions. Like, people have generally been awesome. There's just like a couple, there are still some weird toxicity left in that fandom. Yeah. More than the greater curve, I think, more than just like generally gaming, and getting back to that has been a little bit of a bummer. Yeah. Even if it is comparatively super small.
Yeah. For me, I actually, my lack of an answer to this question makes me feel good about the restructure, because a lot of the restructures have been to eliminate things that just were not working, So like, just when we simplified things, it made it, it just made it easier to exist doing this work, So like, this past restructure has been remarkable for its lack of difficulty in terms of new complications and, new things to maintain. While also, like, the restructure has meant doing more work, doing Unfilmable, bringing Bonfire Side Chat back. These are non-trivial additions to the schedule, but it's also cool and rewarding work. And, doing spreadsheet admin for certain parts of the Patreon, not necessarily as cool or rewarding. So,
yeah, it has been by and large, on every conceivable metric, a huge success. Yeah. And it is just, there are a couple of, because I'm asked about the negative parts, I can talk about that, but the positive parts are way more important and prominent.
Yes. So, Mark asks a question. How come you guys never made the jump to YouTube? For the record, I think the network is awesome as is, and I prefer the audio only format, but it seems like a lot of content creators these days are going the video route. More money on YouTube? Maybe this is an inside baseball question, but I've always been curious. Keep up the great work.
Yeah, this question came in late, and I was like, "Hey, ask that again, because it's a good question."
Yes.
We talked about this at one point, not like necessarily seriously considered, but I have a very distinct memory of us talking about this. The first time we were having our panel at PRGE, and we were up against the Peanut Butter Boy. Yeah. And the Peanut Butter Child had this huge line around the corner, and we had our general 25, 30 people, that we generally, which I'm thankful for and are awesome, who come to our live shows, sometimes, right? Like, it varies, but the, just thinking, I was just like, oh, this guy's like, and I've watched that guy's content and stuff. And it's not like, I don't have anything against him. I don't think he's bad. I don't think he's doing anything really special though. He just kind of has made it with that really, really wide install base.
Yeah.
On YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like, to me, I don't think there's anything there that qualifies as like particularly unique. I just think that like it's just YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
So you and I like talked about it, or caroused about it, or caroused, or some kind of thing without seriously considered, some verb that means not sat down and seriously considered.
Yeah.
I
think we came to a couple of conclusions. It's a different kind of content. It's a different kind of work. Video workflow is, really, really intensive. And it is, I think that it, for us, the ability to kind of get stuff out on a regular basis is one of our most important assets. Retooling to do this in video would add so many more roadblocks that would be implausible for us to do as much as we
almost
do.
Every show on the network would go away.
Yes.
Like basically overnight.
Yeah.
It is most of the YouTube creators who I like put out a video a month at best.
Yeah.
Oftentimes every several months, right? Like it feels like Joseph Anderson, who I like, puts out 5 videos a year.
Yeah.
And compare that to Duckfeed, where we put out something every day. And a large portion of that is because that workflow is easier. Like part of it is because we work really hard, and because for a long time we didn't know how to do stretch goals other than making new shows. And we have a lot of interest. Like we talked about that a lot. But part of it is also just like it's just a lot easier. It's also, I know that in YouTube, and having read like a lot of accounts, like Voidburger did a Medium post about this, it is a lot about chasing an algorithm.
Yeah, fuck that.
Which I have no tolerance or stomach for, like, and that means tailoring your content to fit that algorithm. So like long videos are in, and then it became like videos of a certain length. Like I think like a 12-minute thing is like basically in right now.
Yeah.
As far as the algorithm. So like you tailor your content, and we don't want to tailor shit.
Yeah.
That has generally been kind of a value of the network, is like, no, like let's follow our gut and not actually chase any marketing stuff.
No, absolutely. And, for my kind of piece of this, worked in video marketing for quite a while, and constantly had discussions, and helped write content and made recommendations, did research about ways to optimize for like video marketing and ads and what's in and what's out in the algorithm and stuff like that. And I was like, no, like I know people who have gotten successful, basically living in that system, and they seem miserable about it. So no, it's not something that I am necessarily interested in. I don't think that is conducive to really good work. For me, I love doing video work. Like I love editing, things like that. It's just a matter of, it's a lot. So
yeah, it's a lot of work.
I'm happy, having that be supplemental.
Yeah. And then also, insofar as the network being a partnership, like I don't like doing it too.
Yeah.
So like if we seriously have that discussion, that would be something like a factor. Like not that I can't learn, not that I couldn't make myself do it.
Right.
But it's not work I enjoy. Like I conceptually can understand video editing, right? Like it's not that different from audio editing, and it's like moving on a timeline. It's 2 timelines. Like you sync up, and like I get that. I've done minor video stuff. I don't like that extra step.
You have
not
to,
that to condemn like your like of it or anything. I'm just saying,
no,
I've tried it. It's not for me.
It's different tolerances. When people talk to me, especially, back in school, or, just when having discussions about video editing, you really have to enjoy information management. You have to enjoy tedium.
Yeah.
There is a bonsai tree kind of aspect to it if you're doing something highly edited.
And finally, just to close out show questions, it's weird being caught up because we did those catch-up episodes.
Yeah.
Question about the network. Despite being available to a wide audience, podcasting tends to be a fairly personal and intimate thing. It can be easy to feel like you know these people that you've been listening to for years. I know Gary and Cole have had many discussions on abject suffering that they would probably not have with a complete stranger, yet they are on the internet for anyone to listen to. Have you or any of the other Duckfeed hosts had issues with listeners getting too familiar, not respecting boundaries, or otherwise not realizing that, at the end of the day, they are complete strangers to you? No specifics are necessary, of course. I am curious. I have.
Yeah.
Nobody stalked me or anything like that, but this is when somebody, I talk a lot on Twitter, and I bet you people get annoyed by this, but about kind of like Twitter etiquette. Like if I see a good thread that somebody has about like, hey, when should you reply?
Yeah.
A lot of it is really related to this, because it's like, you might be making, if I don't know you and you're making a joke and it seems like it might not be a joke, keep in mind, I don't know you, you know?
Yeah. I think this, I noticed this, like I noticed the parasocial nature of when we meet people at live events a little bit, and you know, somebody will say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so nervous." If I feel, I hear your voices and I feel like I know all these details about you, and here I am just like a random nobody. And I think that like, if you're listening, like personally, if you ever felt or expressed doubt, like, hey, am I pushing this boundary, or I want to avoid pushing that boundary, you are, just by asking that question of yourself, in the good category.
Yeah. Not pushing the boundary.
Right.
Like just have some self-awareness about it.
Yeah.
You know, like if we do those public things because we want to meet people. I'm on Twitter partly because I like interacting with people. Right.
Yeah.
So that's not a problem. I'm not saying that is bad in any way. Like we're going to meet a bunch of people at Duckfest. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
But it's just keep in mind, like, you just always know, like, introduce yourself, right? Like, you treat it like you're meeting somebody, because that's what you're doing. Like, even if you do know a lot of stuff, and like, we're both, pretty open about fairly intimate things online. Like, I'm aware of that. That's by, that's intention.
Yep.
By intention. Just keep in mind though, that like, it's, like it's not a two-way street.
Yeah.
So in person, it might feel a little bit different. Like even something that I brought up on the show, like if you just like lead with it, it's like, well, I know it was on the show. It's not technically a secret. Yeah. I also just met you though. So like take a second to curate our feelings or whatever, and like make sure we're all cool.
Yeah.
Just want to be, everybody be cool.
Yeah. I feel like this has, this problem has lessened. Paradoxically, even as the audience has grown, just because learning to manage boundaries, and learning how to, not be freaked out by the parasocial relationship, is a skill that gets better as you go along, so yeah, kind of knowing how not to, encourage it, I guess, accidentally. Yeah.
And setting those boundaries is really hard. In general, because you want to be nice and you don't want to take it for granted that like it's in some ways, like if it is not its own blessing, it is a side effect of a blessing, that people even want that.
Yes.
That people, have that familiarity or are interested. Like that's ultimately tied to a really great thing that we're very lucky to have.
Yeah.
So pushing back against that can be very difficult. Like I never want someone to feel bad. Right. But sometimes like, it's like, oh, you just message a lot. I can't, I just don't have the time for it. And it's not because I don't like you or that it's bad. It's because I don't know you. And it's I'm also just doing my life. At the same time, like it's, and not saying that they don't, they're not doing their own life or anything like that, but it is that parasocial relationship that is more intimate one way than the other.
Yeah. And there have been, there have been times like, this is how we met Jala, like,
and Jala's great.
Yeah. She's fantastic.
Jeremy.
Yeah. That's how we met Jeremy.
Like, we had him on a show, but we became friends. Like he wasn't like, he like didn't start because of being a fan.
Right.
But was, and like Jeremy's like one of my best friends. Like I love Jeremy.
Yeah.
So it can like transcend. It just has to be treated like with some emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
I think like as a relationship.
For Jala and the level, she has been an engaged fan for, she had been an engaged fan for years and years. And just her really good attitude and general just like ability to add to the conversation was like, yeah, like you're actually like a really good fit on here. It's like, Billy, this makes perfect sense. So that is a case. I didn't know her from Adam, and then bring her on. It's good.
Yep.
Yeah.
The very cool. It is generally really, really cool that people like Jala and Jeremy and can come on and everything. It is just something to be treated with just like some kid gloves and self-awareness, I think.
Yeah. It is really weird as a dude to say like, yeah, sometimes there are reply guy problems.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what it is. And it always I feel bad about it. Right.
Yeah.
But setting up that boundaries, like when you talked about getting better at it, like I just definitely have gotten to where it's like, well, I don't respond to everything. Like if it's something I don't have anything to say about, I tamp down the feeling like I should be gracious that people even care what I have to think, and start thinking, well, like also though I'm a person and my time is valuable.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, that's not a condemnation. It's certainly not a subtweet of anybody.
No,
it is just the case.
There are more of you than there are of us.
Yeah. That's basically it.
Yeah.
So never want anyone to feel bad about tweeting or coming up and meeting us. You definitely come and introduce yourself. Just we're not scary. We just be nice and be cool.
Yeah.
Be cool.
And everybody, real life and online. Good.
Yeah. Let's do our 3 lightning round questions and get to the topic.
Yes.
Just because these will be lightning fast. Did you watch Pet Sematary 2019?
So, Kanaka, did I just watch Pet Sematary 2019?
Oh, never mind.
So somebody responded, maybe? And yes, maybe. I have not seen it. I'm curious about it, just as part of the broader Stephen King revival. The original is one of the scariest movies I've ever seen, and I'm kind of a little reticent.
Yeah, it's not supposed to be good.
Yeah.
And in the trailer, they don't, when the dead is better line is totally mangled. It's just like, sometimes dead is better.
No.
They said it like it's talking about peanut butter. It's because Ritz crackers have 3 kinds of salt. Like it's really limp.
Yeah.
Oh.
Let's see here. Stewart says, what percentage of the time that Cole asks, do you want me to cut that last part out, does Gary actually say yes?
25.
Yeah. And usually when I ask that, it's a joke.
Yes. Yep. But every once in a while, 25% of the total times it's actually said on air, 0% of the times you guys hear.
Yes.
And what are your opinions on Warhammer 40K's tabletop play, video games, universe, and fan base? Says Andy Ward. I have never played Warhammer 40K. I have played a lot of Iron Kingdoms, which is an RPG that is related to Warhammer, and it is the most mechanically tight and satisfying tabletop RPG I've ever played. I really love it. But I have not actually played Warhammer itself.
Yeah, it's a huge blind spot for me. And at this point, it is too intimidating to even approach. I understand that the Dawn of War games or whatever, those tactical strategy games are actually really good that are set in the 40K universe. But like that might be my entry point. But yeah, as far as the universe and stuff goes, I've heard really shitty things about Games Workshop's kind of business practices. Yeah, that scare me off of kind of engaging with the actual tabletop play, even if I did play tabletop stuff. So I'm not part of the audience. And the universe kind of seems like that's a bunch of satire that a lot of people really embrace unironically. Space fascists, woo. Yeah. I know there's a lot of battle nuns. Yeah. In it. Looking at this, also just looking online, just to issue a minor correction, is I don't think there's not an official Iron Kingdoms to Warhammer comparison. I think that they're more like similar systems, but they are not made by the same people. Doesn't look like there's an official connection. I think that when it was originally pitched to me, somebody said, "Oh, it's like it's related to Warhammer," and they just meant in terms of gameplay, not in terms of like official. And I just kind of kludged those two facts together. Yeah. In my brain, so I have not even really touched it. But yeah, in that case, it's just a blind spot for me. Just like Forgotten Realms is a blind spot for lots of people who play Warhammer. It's fine. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. But yeah, I'm not necessarily getting it. Even though the company is shitty, like a lot of companies are shitty, that wouldn't stop me from playing like Vermintide. Which looks really cool and like I'm interested in. I haven't got a chance. Yeah, Jella and David have been playing a lot of Vermintide with some fans recently, and it sounds really good. Oh my god! Yeah, it sounds incredible. Like I just haven't played it, so it sounds super cool. Like I'll play it. Let's do the glitch one. Indeed. This is our topic for this episode. This comes from Matthew Woodyard. And they say, possible long-form topic, games that are broken or glitchy. You both like to discuss games in spite of any technical flaws because they may not be reproduced 100% of the time, and it's not subtracting from the spirit of the game. You do touch on glitches or bugs that you run into from time to time, though, and I think it might be worth taking a look at just how bad it needs to get before it's just impossible not to consider. Possible topics for discussion on that front might include the goofy faces of Mass Effect Andromeda and every 3D Sonic the Hedgehog game.
Also worth discussing are times when glitches are objectively improving a game, a la Skyrim. Thanks. Shout out to Monster My Podcast for being his favorite and possibly underrated show on the network.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, I would say it's probably underrated.
Yeah.
Listen to Monster My Podcast, people.
Please do. It's a very small time investment.
Yeah, if you wanted a slightly smarter everything to guppy. Monster My Podcast.
The food may be okay, but the portions are manageable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the portions are modest. Let's talk about glitches.
Yeah. So I think that to draw some boundaries around this, what I think falls a little bit outside of this would be something like the audio reproduction or some of the kind of battle system things in, say, the Game Boy Advance remakes of the Final Fantasy games.
Those are like port issues.
Yeah, those are like port issues.
The sloppy porting.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think that this is, we can define it. Mm-hmm. I feel like people probably have a intuitive idea.
Yes. Yeah.
What I mean by this, but an unintended, effect in a game that is not just, slop. Mm-hmm. Like the shitty character portraits on the port of Final Fantasy VI on iOS are not a glitch.
Right.
But it's sloppy and lazy and shitty. Yeah. This is stuff like the weird faces in Mass Effect Andromeda or in San Andreas when you can bicycle in the air.
Right. Additionally, kind of at the very far end of this, something that absolutely is a deal breaker is glitches that halt progress or erase progress.
Well, let's talk about that because I think that counts. It's at the far end; it's a deal breaker, mm-hmm. but I think it's worth discussing.
Yeah.
So if we're kind of creating a spectrum of like bother.
Yes.
Right. So like that is obviously the Vorpal glitch. Is something that stops you from being able to continue the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I can't think about that without thinking about the launch experience of Fallout New Vegas.
Yeah.
Right? Where there are people who still have a vendetta against that game, even though those issues have been smoothed out, at least on modern systems. I don't know if the PS3 version was ever fixed, but that still colors their experience of the game. And if you didn't have that experience, they're baffled that you will continue given the game shrift when it did them bad.
And I think that's what Matthew's kind of getting at is like, when is it appropriate for that to be kind of a part of an evaluation?
Yes.
Or part of a critical evaluation. And it's really tricky because a lot of times for those things, so for New Vegas, I just didn't experience that, like at all. Mm-hmm. Like I had to read about it online, and it is counterintuitive to the extreme for me to think my thoughts on New Vegas are worse because somebody I've never met had a game-breaking glitch.
Yeah.
Yes, that sucks objectively,
mm-hmm.
but since it is something that can be patched out, like it always feels, we talked about that a lot, which Matthew also references, like it feels like it should not be something that is like, it's too impermanent to be kind of part of an evaluation, but it's also not part of my experience in that case as well. And that it's very interesting. Like it's this question like gets at the heart of like, an attempt at an objective evaluation versus an experiential kind of account.
Yeah.
And glitches can definitely, if a glitch is widespread and everyone's having this progress or that gap you can't jump over into the Ninja Turtles game on that, on that port of the NES Ninja Turtles game,
mm-hmm.
like that makes the game worse.
Yeah.
That sucks. That's universal. It's everywhere. Like everyone who plays it has that experience. It's not cosmetic. It stops you from beating the game.
Yeah.
That's horrible. That tanks the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it becomes a part of the story of the game, too, because it is so widespread, because it is, inseparable from the thing itself.
No.
Yeah.
But if it's a progress blocking thing that, a smaller percentage of people get,
mm-hmm.
that, like, yes, that sucks for them. Like, they had a bad experience with the game, but it's hard for me to blame New Vegas for that.
Right.
It's like the aspects of a game that are permanent, that cannot be, that are not changed,
mm-hmm.
that are not fixed, like feel more important to something's critical evaluation to me. Like, we said this a bunch of times too. I think it's generally a good thing that games are a medium that can be updated.
Mm-hmm.
That happens sometimes with like DVD releases or later releases of films, but it happens most with games. Mm-hmm. It's good. It's good that you can fix it.
Yeah.
after the case. It's bad when developers take advantage of that. It's bad if developers like push something out they don't know is not good and throw on a billion day one patches.
Mm-hmm.
like that sucks. But if the very fact that it can be done is not inherently bad.
Yeah. Looking at like the Mass Effect Andromeda problem, that's a game that I haven't played, but I really want to, just because it's more Mass Effect and it has been a very long time since I've dipped into that. I think that falls a little bit more into the aspect of personal taste, and how resilient is your suspension of disbelief. So Mass Effect Andromeda animation glitches or strange faces, that falls into the category of something that just wouldn't bother me, because for as good as those faces and animations were, in Mass Effect 2, that was never the selling point. That was never the selling point for me. I think that gets into how much do you value polish in a way,
or how robust or fragile is your immersion?
Yes. Yeah.
Your sense of immersion, like, and not with like not loaded terms for those, but just kind of like to what degree is that kind of thing, and I think that some of this is probably at least partially like a generational thing.
Yeah.
Like I am used to a layer of abstraction in my games between my things, not even getting close to approaching any kind of realistic face. So, like the faces in Deus Ex look fine to me.
Yeah.
And those look worse or less like a face than any of, like, I'm looking up, I didn't really know about the Mass Effect Andromeda faces thing. So I, Google image search Mass Effect Andromeda faces, and like, they're not great models.
No.
They're pretty goofy, but it's like, this would never bother me in a million years.
Yeah. Like I don't feel slighted that's the case. Right. And I wouldn't have felt slighted if that was the case in Mass Effect 2. Like what matters to me is kind of the gestalt of, what's happening, as opposed to really, really just kind of getting that one thing, stuck as a pebble in my shoe. Right.
Yeah. And it looks like this is something that, again, also got patched.
Yes. Yeah.
So they fixed it. So it wouldn't bother me in the first place very much, and ultimately don't affect the legacy of the game to me very much.
Yeah.
So like an aesthetic glitch like that is never going to bother me personally.
And in fact, when a game glitches out, I think it's charming in a way, again, speaking back to personal taste, and this gets to Matthew's Skyrim example, but like, yeah, when you get thrown all the way into the air by the giants, that's them taking a bug and just saying, well, maybe that just happens, having somebody like, spin in a circle in a corner, that is really funny to me.
Sure. Like the doctor in New Vegas's head rotating on his neck axis and like stretching out and growing.
Yeah.
As it moved towards me and stuff, like, so that's what I saw.
Yeah.
Happened to me in game, and I was just, holy shit. Like it feels a little bit like a blessing to me.
Yeah.
When it happens, because you don't always get to see it. And it's a really fun thread, like on Something Awful or whatever, the game glitch thread. That's really good. In general, this stuff is pretty funny to me. And I guess like when I project, or when I try to think of like who would be sensitive to it, like what would be different about me if this bothered me?
Yeah.
And it's like, I would care more about polish. Like it'd be something where like, I just like was like, no, this is kind of unprofessional and shoddy. This work. I would care, significantly more about immersion. Like my immersion would be something that like, even like immersion in a game is not like a core value to me. I like an immersive experience quite a bit, but like I'm always aware I'm playing a game, and I like that. I like games that know their games, I like games that present as games. I've always hated the move that games need to be more like movies or more like real life. I want a game to feel like a video game.
You beat me to a key point. I don't dislike being reminded that I'm playing a video game. And that this is a digital artifice that I'm engaging with. Like that is fine with me.
It's a reason why I've been, there's multiple reasons why I have been very slow to care about VR. And that's one of them.
Yeah.
I like looking at a screen, sitting in a chair, looking over at seeing the stuff on my desk, looking down at Pocket. Like I don't want to be locked in to anything really. I don't need to be the protagonist.
Yeah.
Like sometimes we talk about moments of that kind of connection, like, doing a long combat string and feeling that connection to your character.
Right.
Like, oh, I'm like a 25 hits in a row on Batman. And there's this connection between me and my controller and the guy, but I don't need to be the guy. I'm happy with the controller to always be there, always feel that weight in my hand.
Yeah.
So that immersion doesn't bother me. So when something just interferes with that artifice, and a character looks a little goofy or a character makes a weird noise, And this is I'm purely talking about aesthetic glitches, like nothing that actually impacts like readability or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But just like aesthetic glitches, like this character looks goofy, or this character like T-poses for a second. Like it feels like a blessing.
Yeah.
Like it feels just like, oh, okay.
Yeah. It's one of those little moments when God winks at you.
Yeah, exactly. And if it does affect things, actually affect my experience, like an audio glitch that makes words sound garbled or something, so I don't understand what's happening in that portion of dialogue, like that sucks.
Oh, but even some of those, I mean, we talked about this when we talked about that during The Witcher, when the scene with the tapestry hags it lacked all VO as they were talking. Like that was super creepy.
Yeah. Sometimes that can be either creepy or fun on its own, and it's always because we live in this world where there's no information that's hidden to us. We can just get that information.
Yeah.
Like the worst case scenario that happens in that is I have to like watch a YouTube of that scene to get the dialogue or whatever. And that sucks. Like that's inconvenient. I don't think it's good. It's just not that weighted very heavily for me.
Right.
If it happens every time, that sucks. But the other thing is like games are so democratic, and I play most of my video games on PC. Someone's fixed it.
Yep.
Like, 9 times out of 10, even if the developer didn't patch it in, like somebody's fixed it.
Yeah.
They just feel like temporary problems to me in a really, really strong way.
Yeah. And when the glitch does get in the way of play, so referring to the 3D Sonic games, I had a copy of Sonic Adventure 2 where the last level of Shadow's campaign was like nearly impossible to beat. Like finishing it was a glitch as opposed to the intended result. According to that disc, because like there was just there was a rail that was marked as, basically not being clippable, right? You would just fly through it and you would have to find an exploit to get around it. That sucks. That is shoddy. That gets in the way of actual play. It stops you from finishing. And that is, very different, it is more similar to the game ending bug or the impossible to finish, making a bug that makes things impossible to finish.
Yeah, it definitely depends on how much friction is being applied, and the ultimate friction is being unable to finish the game. Yeah, that's enough friction to put you to a stop. But being slowed down a little bit doesn't bother me, and if it doesn't slow me down at all, bring them on. I brought it up a bunch of times, but like the first time I played Fallout 3, which is the first Gamebryo engine, like I'd never played any of the Elder Scrolls games before Fallout 3. Yeah. And having the Murloc. Or not the Murloc, the Mirelurk that I killed in the one of the endless subway tunnels, glitching out and splashing. And the whole time I was exploring the dungeon, I felt like something was stalking me because I had the ambient sound of things splashing around in the water. And it was awesome. Like I was like, there's nothing on my radar. What the fuck is going on? I eventually tracked it down, and the corpse was just glitching out, splashing in the water. And again, like I can imagine a mindset that gets mad at that, but I'm just so far from that person. Yeah. I was like, that's awesome. Like I was super scared. Like this is dumb as hell. Let's go save my dad. Let's go see what Three Dog's up to. Yeah.
I had a kind of a similar experience the first time that I played Silent Hill Shattered Memories. When I, the Wii Silent Hill game, or remake of the first one, put a pin in that. Getting to in one of the final dungeons, it's like an apartment building, and it's one of the more complicated dungeons that has a really kind of chaotic, nonsensical hallways rearranging themselves kind of thing. I clipped through a staircase, and I just kind of fell into the blackness. And, no matter where I ran, Harry was just kind of like running around in a void. And I kept on doing that for like 10, 15 minutes, thinking that was intentional, thinking that like, oh yeah, like this might be like a House of Leaves kind of thing. Like maybe that is the culmination, is that you're in the void and you go until there's a light. And like, no, actually you just kind of like fell through the level. And you're running in nothing, but it felt so of a piece with everything that like for those 10, 15 minutes, I was basically holding my breath, waiting for something to break.
Yeah. Yeah. Knowing like that's a good point though. Like there's knowing that something is a glitch. Like it is so weird when something, a game has a boundary box that can include a lot of things that would be commonly, be seen as glitches. Yeah. And that's such a, like, I mentioned, this is not a glitch, but when I first played Arkham Asylum, and my computer was too slow to run it, it went into slow-mo basically every time there was combat. Oh, yeah? And I mentioned that before. And like, so I played it and I felt like, oh, this combat is just like super cinematic and slow. Like not super slow-mo, but like 20% slower. Yeah. I was like, oh, this is a stylistic choice. that they made.
That reminds me of a story. Kevin from Video Games Hot Dog, when you first started playing Binding of Isaac back when it was, back the Flash version and before it was really well optimized, his computer basically ran it at half speed and he did not know that was the case.
Oh yeah.
So he said, I don't see what the problem is. I got to Mom or whoever the last boss was. And oh yeah, it's because you had double the time to react to stuff.
Yeah. You were playing in bullet time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, in general, you're right. They don't tend to bother us. We do think that they can be good.
Mm-hmm.
And there is definitely a line though.
Yeah.
And that is a lot of friction. Crashes the desktop will bother me.
Yeah.
As a thing, I am pretty good with old school PC save state discipline.
Yeah.
But losing progress always sucks. That's another thing that is somewhere between the stopping progress and aesthetic glitch.
Mm-hmm.
That's annoying. If it happens enough, that can actually be a real bother.
Yeah.
As
when it makes you paranoid that every time you open a door, it's going to dump you out.
Yeah. That can become intolerable. So just the amount of friction it can add,
mm-hmm.
and the people have different amounts of tolerances for different aspects.
Yeah.
So, but we're both pretty chill about it.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks everybody for your questions. If you did not get your question answered, it will be answered in either one of our cleanups or next month's.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to ask us questions for the September episode, become a patron. Go to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv and keep an eye out for that prompt. And we will let you know when we're ready for more questions.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for coming on force on that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we really do appreciate that.
Yeah.
We have your responses to games
that we played and talked about.
That we played. So we're ready to chat about them.
Yeah. I'll pick up here. So starting with responses about Final Fantasy V. Robert says via contact, just a quick one from me. The main antagonist of Ultima 3 was called Exodus, or translated for its Japanese release, Exodasu. Sorry if I mangled that. Exdeath is the extremely similar Exodasu. What are the odds that Exdeath was probably originally going to be called Exodus? But then they decided that throwing in a morbid English word would make him sound cool and deep to Japanese audience. I think it's likely and also very funny.
Definitely possible.
Yeah, that's a thing that happens.
Did not know that.
Gratuitous English is a thing in Japanese.
I knew
media.
that Ultimate 3 was called Exodus.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that was about the antagonist, but I did not know that about the original name.
No.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Sean says, "Viva Portland." Around, I'm gonna count out here your methods here. Sean says, "Viva Portland." Around 2011, I made a real attempt to play every Final Fantasy in a year. It didn't really take, but I made it through 4, 5, and 6. One of the reasons for the replay was to determine our ranking, something I've also kind of fallen out of the habit of doing, but since my replay of 5, it's consistently been at the bottom of my list. I've never really played 1 through 3, and 13 at least looks nice. The thing that hit me the hardest on this last replay was the thing that Final Fantasy V is known for, the job system, is balanced especially poorly. Of course, I love being able to control my party's composition, make challenge runs with a party of only white mages or whatever, but for me, it almost always comes down to physical heavy attackers like the knight or fighter, or an attack mage, a healer, and a wild card, usually a light attacker like a thief. Then at some point, I'd run up against a boss that was literally impossible that I could one-shot if I changed my party composition. To me, this means the decisions I'm making and who is doing what are essentially arbitrary. The game wants me to customize who does what to reflect my playstyle, but the battle system of the time doesn't allow you to tackle bosses in multiple ways via weaknesses or gimmicks. What's worse, the story is the most generic light warrior stuff the series can offer, with no real twist or originality. I have to wonder if most of the resources went into the job system, which turned out to be a dud. In other words, there's nothing to recommend this game. I'm surprised to say that this is the Final Fantasy game I'm least likely to revisit in my lifetime. Oh well, live and learn. Love the show as always, and looking forward to seeing you guys again at Duckfest and at PRGE. Is that happening this year?
Yes.
Yes.
We have a table and we have a panel. Details to come.
Yeah, I think I know which Sean this is. Hey, Sean.
Hi, Sean.
See you soon.
Yep.
Yeah.
It is that Sean.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about that. Like I we both like the puzzle of putting together a party composition for the bosses.
Mm-hmm.
But I mentioned this earlier. I started replaying Final Fantasy Tactics, the superior game, shortly after this, and I'm halfway through my playthrough. Mm-hmm. And there is something that Paul from the Slack introduced me, to this concept I just I knew about, but I never really thought about, which is like growth versus strength kind of compositions in these games.
Yeah.
So like
elaborate.
For the bosses in Final Fantasy V, you had to change your party to a strength party, but you're not gaining experience or AP for the growth you want.
Yeah.
During those things. So you kind of vacillate between those two modes.
Yeah.
It bothers me less in Final Fantasy Tactics than it does here. Like obviously there's some nonsense like having to make, put auto potion on Ramza and turn him into a ninja and et cetera for certain boss fights, things like that, which suck. It doesn't happen that often in that game, but it is a problem both games have. And I think it's probably something that's likely part of having that kind of job composition.
Yeah.
Like making bosses that are approachable from every kind of job would be a really, really tall order. Not saying it's impossible, but I think it'd be very difficult.
Increasing the number of options and combinations you have kind of necessarily increases the number of wrong answers that you have to the question the boss is asking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's also even where I thought Sean was going with this is like dud classes. Dud abilities. Like the thing that struck me, or one of the things that struck me when we replayed 5 was how many abilities are just absolutely horseshit. Like I'm just like never. It's kind of cool that I'm equipping this. Mm-hmm. I'm getting this skill on my ranger, but I'll never use it.
Yeah.
I never used 80% of the stuff I had, which is partly true again of later games with job systems, but not as true.
Which is a shame because that one encounter that you complained about, that thing you didn't use would have been perfect for it.
I wish I had known.
Yeah.
If only I had thought of that. The animals ranger command.
Yeah.
From Final Fantasy V. Summoning a squirrel to heal me for 15 hit points would have been the deal maker. That.
Yeah. I think in a lot of ways this, what you're saying and what Sean is saying come back to what we talked about in the generalities, which is that death is kind of built into the loop. Of taking on some of the harder bosses, where you go in with what you think is with your best guess at what is going to be strong for this, and you find out how you were wrong, and then come back and try it again with something that is more optimal. It's part of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Let's see here.
What does Doug say?
Doug says, "Viva Contact."
Thank you.
Full disclosure, I haven't played FF5, but your episode got me thinking about random encounters and GRPs generally, and how this aspect of the genre could be improved from the perfunctory time tax that they seem to be. Generally, a single random battle with scrub enemies can be overcome with simply tapping A. But the best GRP dungeons function better when the aggregate of the random battles can be viewed through the lens of wave combat and survival horror. If the game mets out challenge and resources judiciously, then the random battles will, over time, soften up the party for the looming boss battle. That would make the player have to make more careful considerations about how to balance tactical decisions during the run-up to that climactic fight. The other option is to expand on something like 9 does. In Final Fantasy IX, your character earns permanent upgrade perks by earning AP tied to particular weapons or armor. This can incentivize your character to persevere with a suboptimal loadout, at least temporarily, until the perk is earned. Again, these solutions are not perfect, but it shows that there are ways to implement mechanics that increase the gameplay value of random encounters beyond tappa tappa tappa.
Yeah, I think that this some of this stuff came up because this has been a perennial Slack topic.
Yes.
For a while. And like both of these ideas I think sound cool in theory. Mm-hmm. I think that both of them would still just have the problem of you just doing too much of it.
Yeah.
Right? So like in Final Fantasy IX, there are just too many encounters. Like, yes, you sometimes have suboptimal equipment. Mm-hmm. So you still mostly just have to tap A, right? Yeah. Like just because,
it just takes more rounds
Zidane
to beat
is trying
them.
Yeah, it just takes a couple more rounds and a couple more healing potions at the end. Mm-hmm. Like it ends up being a little bit more of a resource tax, because I have that suboptimal equipment, but like you're still just doing too many fights that you don't have to be engaged with. Like, and like then the first idea, which would tie up that resource thing, so you have to be careful. Like one, I think it's really tricky because you could it would be very frustrating to get to the end of that gauntlet and then get to the boss and not have enough resources to beat them and have to do the whole thing over again.
Yeah.
Which would be like an intolerable thing. And two, why do it as waves upon waves of survival horror combat when you could do it as, so this is a D&D principle.
Yeah.
Like in D&D, you plan your encounters, like you have a boss encounter, but the encounters leading up to it are there to soften up the party. Like in D&D, you are not meant to go into the final fight of a session generally with full resources.
Kyle brings this up a little bit later. I just want to make sure
So why not in this case, and what Doug's talking about specifically, and we'll talk about how this relates to what Kyle says as well, but like what Doug's saying specifically, why not just have one fight that is designed to drain your resources that's really hard and really demanding, then you have the boss fight.
Yeah.
Like doing it as waves over aggregate, like is just requiring me to round something up and do it, there's not really an advantage to doing it that way. Even if it is other than like possibly just thinking of it differently, I guess.
Yeah. I think that me and the artists behind the group TLC are really similar in a lot of ways, but chief among them, no scrubs.
Yeah. No scrubs.
Yeah.
If I don't need to be here for a battle, don't make me fight it. Ever.
Yep.
Period. Like end of sentence. Like none. Never. No. No. New no-nos.
New no-nos. Fuck. I fell asleep watching political YouTube last night, and every time I do that, I wake up to fucking Bill Maher.
Nightmare.
Yeah.
The nightmare of Bill Maher.
And then I have to
say what you want, but they're bloodthirsty. It's a bloodthirsty religion. God damn it, Bill Maher. Like all religions. Shut up.
Yeah. No, so then I have to go through and cut that out of my history so it doesn't come back again. If it was just one channel, I could say no interest, but no, it's people like re-uploading, like
reposting,
doing like compilations and stuff. That is not to the topic. A lot of people have come to us, with games that JRPGs that have gotten around this to a certain extent, or other ways that they've tried to mitigate it. Persona 5 has come up on the Patreon. Kind of comments as a way that's fixed this. That's not a game that I played, but I'll believe people when they say it does make a difference. But yeah, if I don't need to be here, give me the Earthbound, you won, give me the experience.
Earthbound fixed it.
Yep.
It's one of the things too that this has come up with, like where people come with those examples, and I do appreciate it, right? Because I want people to tell me about other systems.
Yeah.
I like thinking about game systems. But they always like answer a part of it.
Yeah.
Like I think about Persona games, even the ones I played, right? And I like them because they are not mindless. Like they tend to be pretty hard. Status effects work. Like they don't start out crushingly difficult, but they eventually get pretty tricky where you have to be mindful. There's still too many encounters.
Yeah.
Like it answers one problem, but you're still spending too many times doing scrub fights and not enough times doing like story fight kind of things. And again, just because it's the best Final Fantasy game, making a point, that's one of the things I love about Final Fantasy Tactics is like you can go and intentionally get random encounters. For the most part, though, every fight has a reason to happen.
Yeah.
Like it's carrying the plot along. And what that means is having way fewer fights, which is something the genre doesn't want to do. Like there are comparatively way fewer fights in Final Fantasy Tactics. There's maybe like 10 or 12 per chapter.
Yeah.
So it's like 50 fights, but they all advance the plot. And that's just like, that's great.
Yeah.
Why? Who could argue with that? Like, why is that bad? And there's no reason not to match that to, or try to match that to a JRPG structure.
Have you played Cosmic Star Heroine?
I have not.
Yeah.
I heard mixed things. It looked cool, and I like Zeboyd, but
but that is a game that at least leans on it. Every battle I'm led to believe is one of those set pieces is meaningful. So it takes JRPG combat, but it puts it to where like, yes, this is what this room is about.
Yeah, that's cool. And into that, and like that game's been on the list for a long time. I know that Mai is a really big fan. Of that game, and I've liked what Zeboyd has done with JRPG combat in the past.
Yes.
So, yeah. So I don't mean to just be like, oh, I'm shooting down your ideas, Doug. I think that like it's kind of not enough.
I mean, all of those your ideas address part of it, and what we are looking for is like a systemic,
Yes, a holistic solution.
Yeah. To
the JRPG problem. Like I played 9. I like that you have to do that. You have to switch up equipment.
Yeah.
It's still just too many encounters.
Yep.
This is me.
Yes.
Caleb says Viva Contact. Final Fantasy wasn't a series I played as a kid, so I picked up a bunch of them a couple years ago and been playing them on and off since playing them on and off since. I saw that you were doing Final Fantasy V for the show, and I went, oh, I played that one. I unfortunately can't think of anything more damning to say about it, however, than that literally every time I tried to remember anything about the game before listening to the episode, I can only remember two things. It had a job system, and it was the one with the evil tree. Everything else had completely fled my memories in the 2 years since I'd played the game. And the few times I thought I remembered something, I had to correct myself because I was actually thinking of 3. I don't remember disliking the game at all while playing, but absolutely nothing about the experience stuck with me. And even now, after listening to the first episode, only bits and pieces are surfacing. I can't think that bodes well for my estimation of the game in the coming years. I had a very similar experience replaying it.
Yeah.
Where I was like, oh, I totally forgot this even happened.
Uh-huh.
Big things. And I was just like, I don't remember that.
Yeah. No, so she sacrifices herself a bunch of times for the Windrake? Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. All right. Cool, I guess. Yeah. No, Final Fantasy V is absolutely like it's the photograph from Back to the Future. It just fades out.
Yeah. So,
well,
agreed.
And, and I'm in the same boat as Caleb. I don't think it's egregious or hateful. It's not like it is not fun to play. On the balance, it's just it's an interesting discussion. What like is it's sufficient but not necessary, right?
Yeah. I would say fully half of it is not fun to play.
Yeah.
Like up until you get a few jobs is not fun. Yeah. And then the final third is not fun.
That's true.
So, like on the balance, like there are fun individual encounters and stuff in there, but on the balance, that's when it's not fun. There is a middle section that is good. Yeah.
But again, it goes back to being a nerd. If half of it's unfun and the other half is fun, then it is back to neutral.
Yeah. I could instead shuffle cards and stare at a wall.
Yeah.
Sinisterly.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Practicing for your tricks.
Yeah. Yep. Gary's trick.
When do you think you're going to break into trying to do magic yourself?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
I watch a bunch of YouTubes about it.
Okay.
I have a deck of like nice cards
nice
for that
cards.
just because I like the feeling of them.
Okay.
They're very nice. Like they feel really good. They're very smooth. I don't know that I have the dexterity for it. Like as somebody who types and plays video games and plays keyboard, like I think that I have above average manual dexterity. I don't know that I have like, cardistry, sleight of hand dexterity.
Yes.
I can get into it. Like maybe I will.
Yeah.
Maybe I will, Cole. There's the choice. Duckfeed.2 or Duckfest 2 feature my close-up magic show. I actually was going to do, there's an open mic at a place called Helium. And I bought an ex-girlfriend, my ex-girlfriend Elizabeth bought me a children's magic kit at one point. And I was going to set that up on a bench up on the stage. And it's all incredibly tiny, like chintzy tricks.
Oh yeah.
For the stand-up thing, and just do them as if everyone could see them. And then just like bow really exaggeratedly when you had the cup with the false bottom and just hide the ball in it. But the idea being it's so far away from anybody that they won't really know what's happening. And I never did it, but that was the idea for my anti-comedy open mic night.
Yeah. That's good.
So, and that was funny and not good.
Yeah. Kyle says via contact, I wanted to respond to the point about random encounters in D&D. Recent D&D editions certainly downplay them, but if you go back and look at the playstyles around old school, basic, and expert D&D, they are core to the game. This is especially true in hex crawls, which is where the JRPG overworld map mechanics came from. The crucial difference is that random encounters in basic and expert, or BNX, do not necessarily involve combat. And in fact, game mechanics strongly discourage the PCs from engaging in combat. Each encounter will include not only monsters, but also interesting environmental details and disposition for both sides. Maybe you meet a plant person who is interested in trading or conversation, or is just running away from another monster. Whatever you roll up, it is more interesting than the cornmeal approach of JRPGs. Many JRPGs tried to mimic this with ambushes and other encounter types, but inevitably, these all just become slightly different forms of cornmeal. I think the video games that got closest to this type of encounter system were Fallout 1 and 2. They're certainly still limited by the medium, but they were pushing in the right direction. Unfortunately, in JRPGs, monsters are nothing more than cool art assets and stat blocks to be mowed down like an overgrown front lawn. This certainly gets to something at the core of D&D, slaughtering hordes of anonymous others, but it fails to capture what makes random encounters such a joy at the table. I'd encourage anyone listening to give an OSR hex crawl or point crawl a try and find out what they are missing.
Yeah, this isn't. It's funny because this is all good. I think I know which Kyle this is.
Yes, it is.
Kyle is good. I don't feel like this is. It's kind of positioned as like a response to, because this is largely what we said. I think we said that it wasn't as important to D, like it was part of D&D, but it wasn't as core to the experience as this. But I think we mentioned it coming from and kind of misadapting.
Oh yeah,
this from D&D.
Yeah,
and it's like it kind of depends on so maybe in the original ones when I came into D&D, which was like first edition, second edition stuff. Like we played a lot of modules, and the modules would have a random encounter table for travel, but it would not be the meat of the module.
Yeah.
So it's possible before that there were more like just kind of crawling across the earth kind of adventures that this is referring to.
Yeah.
But I definitely agree like that is the key difference between those random encounters, right? Like even in D&D, like not even if even if you don't talk, you can run without consequence.
Yeah.
Like it is unlikely to fail or cost you money or end up making you underpowered for a boss.
Yeah.
In like a D&D because you run into a hippogriff on the way to something.
Yeah. So. It seems like you said, it's a botched adaptation. It's a botched execution, where the interesting thing is having different problems to solve. And they're like, ooh, combat, that's a problem you can solve. Let's do it over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too, thinking about this through the lens of games, because like, that is one of the, and this is less true every day, but the violence in games kind of discussion, one aspect of it is that like games are good at modeling combat because combat is full of binary states. It is full of somebody like, oh, this weapon does this and this person can have this done to them this many times. It's very easy to break down combat into numbers, which is something computers are good at. Yeah. Computers are good at relational geometry. Yep. Right. Like tactical positions of things. They're less good at modeling like the human mind, modeling, this conversation with this plant person who maybe wants to trade, but, maybe knows a secret about the plant people or something. Like that's something that's harder. Games do it, but it's harder than just having them be a stat block.
Yeah. I mean, even Final Fantasy V, it has stuff that kind of gets into that where you're, like where you're rescuing the golem, or like in the Phoenix Tower, the magic pots, some stuff that they would bring forward. It's like, like
the town that's a random encounter.
You've shown that you can do this. Like, why don't you just do more of it? It's
just not, because the game would be 10 hours long.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't be able to power the upgrade system with it, and it's like, we'll just find a different way. Like it is a failure of the imagination that this genre is stuck in this rut. And having it be, like it is cool when it's done well. It's also something too where I think about how kind of like modern tabletop play has moved away from this quite a bit. Like I switched the campaign that I play over to Dungeon World because the system I was using didn't work, and that has a move like if you go between large stretches of land, there is a move that your characters do called Undertake a Perilous Journey. And one of the, there tends to be an encounter on that. It's not random though. Like one of the consequences of that is like something gets the drop on you. If it goes well, you get the drop on it, but there's something there. Yeah. But it's it doesn't have to be random. It's like, oh, like I designed it. It's just another encounter along the way. It's part of the fabric of this adventure. Like I still think that is the key to this is fewer fights. Not necessarily fights that you can talk your way out of, because you can talk your way out of fights in Phantasy Star. Yep. Like there are JRPGs that have, and Persona, right? Like there are JRPGs where you have things you can do other than fight, but it just needs to happen less. Like way, way, way less. And in this random encounter, this good version that Kyle's talking about, like Fallout, moving between towns, you maybe get 2. Yeah. Maybe. But you might get none. Yeah. It just needs to be tuned down. So those are all super good points. It makes me want to read some old school hex crawls and look through the encounters, because like very old D&D is a treasure trove of like really good ideas you have to rescue from some very bad ideas. Yeah. Which is super cool.
Yeah. I think this is you.
This is me. David says, Viva Contact. Long time, one thing, first time, other thing. I just want to briefly write in following my listen to the second half of the Final Fantasy V coverage. I doubt I'm the only person to latch on to this, but I think Gary said something important when he, perhaps rhetorically, asked if we wanted you all to keep covering JRPGs if every time he and or Cole is going to bring up the random battles and grinding and BS. I, for one, say yes for a couple of reasons. One, when you complain about this mechanic, it's less a complaint than a critique. It's never just, I hate this, it's bad, the game sucks. It's a nuanced take on why this mechanic is detrimental to the game overall and why it's no longer necessary. I know a common rejoinder to this critique is that these are great podcast or TV watching games to play while you're doing something else, but I don't think that's a particularly strong defense of a game or mechanic. That is something to fill time with while you're distracted by something else. So keep on covering JRPGs and offering these insightful critiques. Two, JRPGs are long games, and many are quote unquote important games that get talked about like they're essential. I want to be literate in the game's discourse, but my time is valuable, and I'll never be able to play something or play every game, let alone every 50-hour plus JRPG. So I partially experienced some just by listening to the two of you. I would never have actually played Nier or Final Fantasy X. I just have too little free time and too many other games I want to play first. But I now at least have some exposure to an experience with these topics because of your coverage. So yes, maybe you guys' suggestion to space these out a bit more going forward is good. But I do hope to listen to more of your coverage of JRPGs in the future. At the very least, we, the audience, owe it to Gary to listen to him gush about Final Fantasy Tactics for hours on some future episode. On this replay, I will probably do a Duckfeed Presents because I'm doing a closer read of it and we covered that 6 years ago or whatever.
Yeah, show was different.
This is a long time ago.
Yeah. No.
Thank you. This is very, very nice things to say.
Thank you. Yeah. No, it's good. It's good to hear at least something in support of this, just as non-pompously as possible. Something that we approach the show wanting to do is making this as a service. Right.
Yeah.
We play these games so you don't have to when they are bad. You can experience them vicariously if you would like to. At the very least, to hear somebody say that is value they get out of it feels good. So thumbs up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I never it is a intentional value of the show to not say things are bad without saying why.
Yeah.
Like I never want to say something is bad without saying why. I don't care about anyone else saying something is bad without saying why or good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just kind of period. Like I think that's like a necessary part of that sentence.
Yes.
Is why. So like, even though we complain about the mechanic or critique the mechanic over and over, like it's always going to be why it's a thing, because it interrupted the experience. Like it was detrimental to the experience. Like that's worth talking about.
Yes.
I do like legitimately think like moving to strategy for at least a year is kind of a good idea. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. I would like a break. Like I would like a break, even though I appreciate that David still wants to hear it. Like I would like a break. So
understandable.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean like there's still like, forever, and either for this or Bonfireside Chat, Lost Kingdoms is a 4-hour JRPG that From made. I'm really curious about that.
Me too.
Largely because I want to see what a 4-hour JRPG looks like. That's a really interesting idea. Like it sounds like a Ludum Dare thing to me almost. Like that sounds very interesting. So it's not saying like never to things that are specifically bite-sized, but these very long things that I appreciate that David doesn't have time to play. Like I just want to spend time thinking about other stuff in games for a little bit.
True. Agreed.
So,
yeah.
Very appreciated though. Very, very, very sweet of you.
Rich says via contact, in response to the tangent in the Final Fantasy V Generalities episode about the Final Fantasy anime, I thought I would point you guys to the existence of the fairly short OVA Last Order Final Fantasy VII. It's a pretty straightforward retelling of the Nibelheim incident up to the death of Zack. It was released with a limited collector's edition of Advent Children, so it long predates any of the additional story beats injected into this period by Crisis Core. While mostly received positively, there was apparently some outcry regarding the changes to the portrayal of the Nibelheim incident that were later reversed when the PSP game revisited the events.
No, thanks for letting us know.
Yep.
I was not familiar with that.
People also brought our attention to Final Fantasy Ultimate, I think is what it is. Another Final Fantasy anime. So we were right. There must have been another one besides the...
According to Google, OVA is the plural form of ovum.
Ooh,
so
yes.
This is a fairly short egg.
So it's like a coin.
Yeah, just a tiny short egg.
Yeah.
Baby egg. You know what I was thinking the other day? What phrase popped into my head? Night eggs.
like night cheese?
Yeah, a little bit, you know, but in my mind they were like freestanding in a field, like floating maybe, you know, like under the moonlight in a cornfield, like
the night eggs come out at night.
Yeah. Yeah, it writes itself basically. You know, like you just got the first sentence like done. You know?
Well, one of the exposed corpses thing.
Yeah, we'll write a novel.
Yeah,
the night eggs come out at night. Yeah. So yeah, night eggs.
Yeah. I sometimes enjoy a night egg. Sometimes I wake up.
Yeah. I've had breakfast for dinner. Like, you know, I've had a night egg before, but I just like, you know, it being like in the corner or whatever. You know, like you turn on your light and then like in stark, you know, bright fluorescent light, like kind of like the movie Pi. There's one egg in the corner of your room.
Yeah.
You know, as you woke up. Night egg.
Here it comes.
Like here it comes. Yeah, like night egg. Thank you for that. Moving on to responses to Wolfenstein: The New Order. And somebody on Slack just want to said Wolfenstein, the new Colossus, which I like. Wolfenstein, the new Colossus. So Dylan says, Viva Contact. Wolfenstein: The New Order and its sequel inspire some really mixed thoughts from me. Both hit during times when my desire to kill Nazis was at its peak, a desire that grows stronger every day in our hell world, and I jumped into them with the intention of making Red Mist out of some racists. What took me by surprise in The New Order, and to a lesser extent in the sequel, is just how well written these games are. Similar to Doom 2016, these games really got me into the headspace of the protagonist in unexpected ways. But while Doom encouraged a rip and tear flow of violence, Wolfenstein trades in surprising empathy for BJ, unexpectedly crafting him into one of the most nuanced game protagonists I've seen. I remember the cutscene of BJ's recovery in the hospital hitting home for me in a way I truly didn't expect, and I think the developer only strengthened this bond with every cutscene that would follow in the series. The gameplay is another story. The part I most expected to enjoy in the new Wolf games quickly became my biggest point of friction. Simply put, I think the shooting in these games is mediocre as hell. The reliance on bullet spongy armor, especially in the New Order, and mech dogs only serves as a road bump in seeing BJ's compelling story or carving a swath through the Reich. A large part of my issues may stem with the unfavorable comparison invited by the vastly superior mechanics of Doom, but I yearned for less resistance. In the second game, the Courthouse Massacre in particular felt so overtuned that I almost didn't finish it. In fact, the more I think about these games, the more I wish they weren't games. The story is so good and so often delivered outside of actual gameplay that I think it would work better as a machinima or miniseries. I'll continue playing the new Wolfenstein games out of sheer love for the characters, but they stand to me as some of the worst examples of ludonarrative dissonance that I've played. I can't wait to hear your thoughts on them, though, because in spite of everything, they're special as hell. Nazi punks, get the fuck out.
Co-signed.
GTFO.
On the last one, at least.
Co-signed. Yeah. I like this shooter. I mean, we talked about it. This subjective as anything, right?
Yeah.
But I like that shooter. For me, like if I was in that situation, I think it is important to actually play the game and like walk through the environments and stuff rather than having it as a collection of cutscenes or machinima.
Yeah.
If I felt how Dylan felt, I would bump it down to easy.
Yeah.
You know, everything will melt pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
You'll just get that mist. You know, cut the swath through the Reich.
You'll get the empowerment. You will get rid of any of the dissonance because BJ will both be this sensitive person who is present in the cutscenes, but he does exist even in the story. Even his purpose in the world is to kill these Nazis. And cut through them. So, yeah, bumping down to easy I think is absolutely a good way to go. I'm playing the new Colossus right now. I fired it up and I'm really enjoying it, but I started on like the lower of the medium difficulty. So like one above, Don't Hurt Me Daddy or whatever. Yeah. And I've died a couple of times. It's still good and fun. I do agree that putting this up against Doom, this does, fall short, but they are also different games.
Yeah, they feel very different to me. Like, yeah. Do this feels like a tradition, like a pretty tight and pleasurable corridor shooter, to me, basically with some like more open elements. Doom is like an arena shooter with this like really super cool risk reward loop.
Yeah.
That it has. Like it's definitely a stronger, more interesting loop.
Yeah.
Than this one has. This to me feels like a good articulation of nothing new, whereas the new Doom felt like something that is new.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Let's see here. Abraham says via contact, Wolfenstein The New Order taught me some excellent DMing strategies for making my players feel actively engaged in the setting and motivated to pursue a villain's downfall. When the player, through the eyes of Blazkowicz, is captured by Death's Head and forced to make an impossible decision regarding the fate of his comrades, the player is made to be a participant in a cruel and brutal death that made me hate the villain in a way that I had never before experienced in a video game. Whereas other games may rely on players being motivated to press forward through a desire for loot, exploration, or entertaining gameplay, The New Order's various antagonists put such a bad taste in my mouth that I simply wanted to kill Death's Head and his cronies as much as Blazkowicz did. To this end, my current D&D campaign made use of the Death's Head capture scene to instill a sense of passion in my players as they pursue the current villain. While infiltrating a Mind Flayer's laboratory with the help of 2 well-liked NPCs, the party was incapacitated and, following some failed rolls to resist mind reading, each player was told to text me the name of which NPC was to be, quote, used for samples. The NPC that received the most votes... sorry. American Idol.
Yeah.
The NPC that received the most votes then had his brain removed and the Mind Flayer escaped, telling the players that they chose the good one. While my players were left stunned. Ending the game session at that moment gave the players plenty of time to think about what had just happened, feeling guilty and building anger towards their Mind Flayer nemesis. The party has participated in several sessions since, at all times obsessed with tracking down the villain and exacting revenge. Just wait until they have to fight a golem powered by their NPC friend's stolen brain. A quick honorable mention for another video game that has influenced an upcoming D&D campaign, Spec Ops: The Line. I hope that using incomplete information to blur the lines between good and bad will make players wonder if they're really the good guys, especially with a set piece inspired by the white phosphorus scene.
I have had a really hard time making players wonder if they're really the good guys.
Yeah.
And stuff like, in a way that it has a big impact.
Mm-hmm.
Like they often aren't, but they tend to be pretty okay with it.
Yeah.
So, that is, all that is a great idea.
Yeah. Steal from games.
I love that. Like something steal from games, and also something that the new Wolves do that I just love in media and call me simple. Right. Mm-hmm. I have a hard on for justice. Mm-hmm. In a way where, like, if you make somebody extremely hateable in a thing and you're really good at it, mm-hmm. and then later I get to watch them get punished, that loop works on me.
Yeah.
Like, I understand that that's probably base and bad or something to be interrogated, but it's just the case. It's a big reason why, like, I love, what happens in Breaking Bad, like happens in Game of Thrones, happens mm-hmm. in, like, a lot of shows.
Yeah.
Like, you get a villain, they're really shitty, they gotta go, they go.
Yep.
Like, that is a really satisfying formula to me. And the sauce in that, like, the secret is making the villain that hateable.
Yeah.
So, yep. And I think Wolf is great at it.
Very much so.
Agreed.
And
sounds like a fun D&D campaign.
Absolutely. And the new Colossus continues that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And whatever the third one is. I'm looking forward to playing Youngblood. I got to get my buddy to get it.
Yeah.
Eli says, Viva Contact. The New Order is a very refreshing play after recently also finishing BioShock Infinite. And I don't just mean that Wolfenstein is actually fun to play. Where Infinite decides to totally jump the gun to have your player oppose a resistance movement and portray them as the antagonist in its back half, Wolfenstein takes a more, let's say, ideologically correct view. I'm talking about the various news articles written by the Nazis and speech blurbs from German citizens. 12 killed in car bombing, hundreds injured. Things were so peaceful just a week ago. Why can't they just leave us in peace? The actions of your resistance are excessive in their violence and collateral damage is inevitable, and this is acknowledged without holding up a mirror to Antifa ideology and saying, come on, who's really the bad guy here? This also lends itself to a truth of humanity that, yes, even after a decade after the literal Nazis have taken over the globe, maybe of those lucky enough to not be at the absolute bottom of the pile will be so strongly attached to their comfort as to be hostile to those pushing back against the oppression. It's also something, just this is an aside, that's followed up on a lot in the sequel. Mm-hmm. As for gameplay, I had a lot of fun, but my main criticism is that pickups should be automatic. There's no situation where I'm not picking up every gun, ammo, health, armor pickup that I find. I am sure some people are able to use overcharge tactically, but it doesn't seem worth the annoyance cost of grabbing everything manually. I would often try to pick something up in the heat of battle, only to end up reloading or picking up one of those big walking turret guns. sometimes even resulting in death for me. Really cool game overall. The soundtrack slaps, and bringing Death Incarnate down upon Nazis feels pretty good in 2019. P.S. I always chalked up this complaint to a weird sticking point with you guys, but seeing the easy difficult labeled as being spineless gamer really rubbed me the wrong way. Like, goddamn, guys. Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah.
That is a callback to Wolfenstein 3D.
Yes. Yeah.
The Can I Play Daddy is they took the actual difficulty titles from Wolf 3D.
Yeah, yeah. So we didn't remark on that in the episode just because it is that callback. You know, and
but it's not great.
Yeah, it's not a good instinct. You can lean away from it. But
and agreed about the pickup thing. I think they fixed that in the sequel. Can you confirm that, Cole?
In the sequel, so I switched between playing on PC to PS4 because I got Wolf 2 on PS4 for like $20 like a year ago. When you are near something, you can just press the button and pick stuff up. You don't have to mouse over it like you do in the first one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I agree that this is a problem that I had with the system as well, and it never kind of stopped being an annoyance for me. But it was low level enough that it didn't bear mentioning in the episode. I just kind of ran with it.
Yeah. The it is one of those things too where like, so I love overcharge and I was able to use it effectively. The simple solution to that is you automatically pick up health if you're under 100%.
Yes.
You know, and then you have to choose to go over. You know, that would be fine.
Yeah.
And you always automatically pick up ammo, automatically pick up armor. Those would be great.
Yeah.
You know, so feels like an easy fix. I think they fixed in the sequel. I'm not totally sure, but you said like they made it better.
Yeah. They made it less, it required less precision. Yeah. And you know, for the first part, like, yeah, you know, there are going to be people in any power arrangement who benefit from the status quo. But yeah, no, there is an injustice inherent in that.
Yeah. It's literally, you know, and one of the things I like, Hell World moves so quickly that I even think that like, if this were made now, it might be different because you'd have to contend with stuff like, you know, now we have like our media, you know, talking about things like, you know, again, like, so recording this on Monday after another big like protest, you know, demonstration thing in Portland on Saturday. Yeah. Right. And you end up with things. So you end up with like kind of, you know, charlatan, shitty journalists. Perpetrating something that's like literally provably false, but is still being picked up on by major news corporations. Yeah. Like, I know that it's so close to saying fake news and I'm trying really hard not to say it. Yeah. But everything Andy No says is fake. Yes. That guy's a charlatan, and this time there's like demonstrably fake. There's evidence that he's like faking things and they're getting picked up.
The Hammer story.
That's not saying the Hammer story.
Look up any Hammers, Hammer bus. Yeah. If you're doing a search for it.
Yeah. So you can read about this. It is discredited. Like yet he had still got picked up like at parts, right? So like that's something they would have to deal with now. Like, it's so crazy that the hell world that we exist in now is so much worse and different and more insidious than the hell world of a couple of years ago. Yeah. You know, this just has people having their like, oh, like I'm against these people because they're terrorists. Why don't they leave us alone? Stuff which happens now. But you don't have like people, you know, purporting to be neutral actively spinning it. Yeah. You know, it's just the man on the street being passive, which like also sucks, but like it's actually worse.
Yeah. You don't have the broader narrative that everything has to be a horse race and there are equivalencies. You know, I made a tweet over the weekend like, yeah, if you haven't excised, you know, both sides and all sides from your vocabulary, you go in the penalty box. And I got people pushing back saying, oh, so you're into extremism, huh? And it's like, well, I didn't respond because those responses are traps, but also white supremacy shouldn't be on the table. you know?
Yeah. That's not being, you know, again, we talked about this a lot, like values neutral. Yeah. Kind of principled stances that I have no time for. Like, you know, I'm just against extremism. That's nonsense. Yeah. You know, like you don't care what the extremism is. Yeah. You just don't like it because it's extreme. Like, that's not a good opinion. No. You know, like don't, you know, I'm just against violence. Really? Like you don't care what the violence is. So like, you know, any there are no just wars. Like there are no, you know, like nobody actually lives like that, but they want to rest in that principle.
Yeah. They want to hold a bunch of other people to that standard. You know? Yeah.
And and apologies for taking up 80% of our runtime on this episode talking about this topic.
Yeah, it was a real miscalculation.
Yeah, we really did it for the entire episode. I can't believe those guys just spend the entire episode talking about this. Moving on to Zach. This is you doing Zach.
Oh, yes.
Viva Contact.
Zach and Viva Contact. I replayed this recently when it was announced for the show, and I'm still amazed at how well it works. There are parts that I struggle with, so the combat is difficult in a way that feels excessive, and the boss fights all take a minute or two longer than they really need to in order to make their point. But in a way, the brutal mechanics reinforce the narrative urgency. Everything seems impossible. Every victory comes with a hefty cost. Even when BJ is flying to the moon and murdering thousands of Nazis at a stretch, you're always just a few bullets away from death. The New Order means everything, from its science fiction mysticism to its gut-punching horror, to its smirking bastard Nazis, to its surprisingly affecting love story. The fact that sincerity works is a result of some great writing, voice work, and animation. And I love how those scenes give weight to the combat, even when you're doing something as simple and direct as knifing soldiers in the back and shooting other soldiers in the face. It's a good example of the way narrative and mechanics can feed off of each other in simple but powerful ways.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have anything to add to that, but that is well put.
No, I mean, it reinforces something we said in the episode, which is it manages to walk a number of very impressive tightropes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Closing us out here, we have Garrett, Viva Contact. My origins with Wolfenstein were on a cousin's computer back in the day playing Wolfenstein 3D. It was pretty straightforward and very much just a game. I went into the New Order expecting a similarly straightforward shooter. To some surprise, it turned out to be pretty heavily narratively focused. The first sex scene really caught me off guard because BJ was always just a bloody face at the bottom of the screen in my eyes, not a dude with emotions driving him to physical intimacy. Wolfenstein The New Order, in my opinion, suffers under the weight of its narrative elements. Whilst I can appreciate how those elements help differentiate it from Doom, a problem the series definitely had back in the day, I also find that it hurts the pacing in ways I find grating. BJ is written well, and I like the exploration of his psyche, but he has, in my experience, been a lone gun behind enemy lines. The addition of many characters he regularly interacts with, in both cutscene and in between mission home base segments, forces the game to slow its rhythm down to accommodate them and hurts the gameplay experience for myself. I can't help but wonder if there was a way to keep the pace more quick while exploring BJ's mentality. Surely there was a way this could be done without the enormous breaks from shooting Nazis. But alas, here we are with a very talkative shooter that feels a bit off-brand. But considering I was absent for so many titles between Wolfenstein 3D and The New Order, maybe I just didn't see the through line to this narrative focus. Hope others got more out of this. It's well made, it just lacks the immediacy of action that I sought. Yeah, interesting idea, because definitely the original Wolfenstein 3D is a arcade shooter.
Yes. Like
at its core. To me, it's very rare that you'll hear me say this, but I think this is, exactly the right amount of talky for me.
Mm-hmm.
For me, that pace, one of the things that they do that is a pacing trick for this is that a lot of the talking does not happen through cutscenes.
Right.
It happens through those exploration segments where you're still active, but you're not necessarily fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that one of the reasons that's important now that it's dealing with kind of a different context than when Wolfenstein 3D came out, is that to fight this threat, we need a coalition victory, basically.
Yeah.
You're going to need other people. The one person who takes down the Nazis is a good fantasy in a world where the Nazis are an abstract era of the past.
Yeah.
When there are actual practical kind of mirrorings of this,
mm-hmm.
I think that having those other people and getting a large, diverse group of people to fight back who all have a vested interest is important to showing that in real life, we all have this interest.
Yes. The idea of BJ as, a lone gunman behind, or a lone wolf behind enemy lines, that makes sense. However, specifically in the New Order, it is about those lines going away. There is no enemy line. It's everything and everywhere.
Yeah.
And making it into a resistance story feels like an evolution that they needed to tell the story that they needed to tell. They kind of go hand in hand, I think. And I can understand that not being what you're looking for, especially with especially with the history with the series, right?
Yeah, if you are if you're looking for an arcade shooter, you're thinking more about that. This is not that.
Right.
I think that evolution probably did happen with the games in between. Just maybe not like 2009 is probably more talky than Wolfenstein 3D.
Yes.
Just kind of naturally being a product of its time, but this kind of very pathos character forward thing is a new direction, and like it worked for us, but it doesn't have to work for everybody.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Thanks everybody for your responses. We really appreciate it. Thanks everybody for your questions and stuff. It's been a long episode.
Yeah.
We are going to announce what we're doing in October. And right now.
Let's do it right now. So the first game that we're covering, October being the spooky month, we're going to be talking about the new Call of Cthulhu game.
Not Sinking City. It is the Call of Cthulhu game that came out in 2018.
Yes.
The official tabletop tie-in game.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. I basically, as soon as it came out, it's like, oh yeah, we're definitely going to do that on WAF. So it has been sitting there for me.
It's a very good WAF game in that it is very imperfect. But the things that it has a lot of things I think are neat about it. Like even, I played it. I did, basically live tweeted my experience of it, and I liked it. On the balance. There are things that I definitely would like to see improved, and I'm looking forward to talking about it.
Yeah.
It is like out of things that came out that year, it's second only really to Vampire as things I think are like, oh, this is a WAF game. Like we have to do that.
Yeah.
So Vampire will happen someday because that's WAF as hell. But after Call of Cthulhu, instead of Vampire, we're doing Silent Hill Shattered Memories.
Yep. I am so excited about this.
Yeah. I've never played it. It's been a while since we've been to Silent Hill. I'm excited about it. I played the first one though, so I played what it's remaking. So I'm looking forward to seeing kind of the points of comparison.
Yep. It is a very strange game that adapts itself to the way that you play. It does like a little psychoanalysis thing that I've not really seen in other games. Yeah, it's really cool, and the way that they adapt the story is something that I really enjoy as well. Yeah. So yeah, Silent Hill Shattered Memories, the Wii version, the PS2 and PSP versions, I guess, are similar, but the Wii version, is the canonical one. So we're doing that. After that, we are doing, this is kind of a strange one for us, but we're going back to Resident Evil 7. Specifically doing the DLCs. So touching on the banned footage, but there are two major story DLCs that came out kind of briefly after we did the main game. So we're going to be spending a lot of our time talking about Not a Hero and End of Zoe, which together put a lot of closure to the story, actually.
Yeah, I have not played them because we've kicked around doing these for the show for a long time. And I'm really excited to because I loved Resident Evil 7. I'm really happy to go back to that world. Like I've kept it installed on my computer this entire time because of that.
Yeah. And also you don't want to redo the tweaks that you did to make it not make you motion sick. That does not sound good to me either. So I'm really looking forward to playing these. I wanted to play them since that game basically came out. And I want to have the show be able, to allow for stuff like that, right? Like we can do a rich DLC on the show. And then finally, so it's a big month. There are 5 weeks in it. So we also have our premium episode that month. So to remind everybody, those are episodes where we put out a preview of the episode that covers generalities, but to hear the full episode, that is for patrons at $5 or better. And we are doing Alan Wake. This is a patron request that we're doing, and it's a game we both like, have talked about kind of off and on. Yep.
Quite a bit, and I'm really looking forward to revisiting.
Me too. So, we're going to be covering the main game. We'll talk about the DLCs, the extra 2 episodes, kind of in broad strokes. You're not going to force me to play those again, so.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. Who will talk about those? Yeah, mouse in your pocket. Like we'll talk about those.
I mean, I will allude to them and talk about what they do.
Yeah.
Not much, and it's all frustrating. Go back and look at the archives of my streams on Xcrank Live to see exactly how poorly that'll go. So
yeah, Alan Wake. I actually did a Let's Play of this as well, but it was before I knew how to do any kind of video. I didn't know anything about video, so they're really low resolution videos, but there's a Let's Play up on YouTube of me playing this game, and I enjoyed it. In my mind, I remember feeling like the combat got very repetitive and the story stuff was really cool throughout.
Yeah, it is.
So yeah, looking forward to that, and a repetitive combat that's actually like not a terrible loop. I'm not opposed to.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, that's October. We have the rest of the year basically planned. all but like just a couple things. It's going to be really cool. If you are somebody who wants to sponsor an episode, just because we have the rest of the year kind of closed up, doesn't mean that you should not sponsor an episode, because we're going to start planning for next year soon, right? Mm-hmm. A month or two, we'll start planning for January.
Yeah.
If you are hearing this, it is probably just days before Duckfest.
Yes.
But so still come to that. Go to Duckfeed.tv/Duckfest.
Mm-hmm.
Also keep an eye out for information about PRGE.
Yes.
So we are there. We are tabling. We have a panel. We have a subject. We will talk about all that stuff soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But otherwise, the best thing that you can do is go to patreon.com/DuckFeed.tv. If you back for only $5 a month, you get access to all of our previous premium episodes of Watch Out for Fireballs, in addition to a bunch of other stuff, like our show Unfilmable, since we're coming up on, since we just announced October, that is our show about how Lovecraft and Lovecraftian ideas have been adapted to the screen.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, just as for fans of that show, I guess that on a podcast called We Love to Watch, where he talked about, me and Cole covered the Stuart Gordon From Beyond. I knew we wouldn't do multiple adaptations of From Beyond, so I guess that on a podcast talking about a movie called Banshee Chapter, which is a loose adaptation of From Beyond that is okay. But it was a very, very fun podcast to record. And there's some more guest stuff coming up as well, so keep an eye out for me on podcasts. I'm trying to get people to come to Duckfest, so I'm guesting on stuff.
Yeah. What else?
That's almost it. Ratings and reviews on Apple Podcast are really appreciated. And say nice things about us on message boards, and come hang out in the Slack.
Please do.
And that's probably it. So until next time, stay safe, night eggs.
Don't crack.
Pretty good sound off. Don't crack, night eggs.
Yeah.